Chapter 122. The Chasing Cloud and Moon restaurant was the largest and most lively restaurant in the capital. There were no less than 100 people sitting in the hall on the first floor. They were drinking wine while listening to the storyteller's eloquent words. It was a great fortune in their lives. Bai Shaoxing shook his head and began his opening speech. Who are the young talents in this world? Then I have to mention those three. In the past 10 years, the three of them used their talents to shock the world and made countless students look up to them. They are Prince Ke and Xiao Minglan from 16 years ago. They were proficient in both literature and martial arts. They were valiant and heroic. They could be said to be the four masters of horse riding, archery, painting and calligraphy. Unfortunately, they were extremely conceited and did not take others seriously. They spent their days in brothels and theaters, indulging in wine and women. In just a few years, they exhausted their talents and were only left with the smell of wine and women's cosmetics. The second one is Prince Ping Nan's son, Xia Hoqing from 11 years ago. When he was young, he was taller than the heavens. His debate on policy overturned the entire Shumi court. When the Xiongnu invaded, he only offered one policy, and the Xiongnu retreated. This caused the Xiongnu imperial court to be in chaos for many years. He could read 10 lines at a glance. Being able to remember everything he saw was his most insignificant skill. It was truly admirable. Unfortunately, the heavens were jealous of such talents. He was born with a sickly aura. When he was 10 years old, he was suddenly infected with a strange poison. Later, his illness became more severe and he was bedridden. Last year he became blind. This white crane's wings could be considered completely broken. Hearing this, the audience could not help but sigh. Someone asked, "What about the last one?" The last one is Ning Shu, the eldest daughter of the Ning family from 7 years ago. Everyone was surprised. Her? Although she solved the Phoenix Terrace case in front of 300,000 people a few days ago, news quickly spread that she had an expert guiding her from behind, and that she did not have any real talent. She only purposely made a big show of it to wash away her bad reputation of being a jinx to her husband. This news spread like wildfire and gradually spread throughout the entire capital. From the beginning to the end, Lady Ning did not stand out to refute. Was this not a guilty conscience? But then they heard Bai Shaoxing's clap of the bamboo clapper. Everybody was shocked. Exactly. As for Lady Ning, she started learning at the age of 2, and showed an unusual precocious intelligence at the age of 4. As long as she had seen someone or touched something, she could pick it out of 1,000 after a few months. At the age of 5, she helped the Empress in the palace to solve the case of the Phoenix hairpin theft. At the age of 6, she was chosen by the female Zhuge Husi to be her last disciple. But later, when he was 10 years old, a crazy Taoist suddenly gave him the curse of 9 generations. Since then, his situation had been deteriorating. Everyone knew what happened after that. Now the whole world called her Great Yu's first female general who jinxes her husband, and no one remembered her past glory. Until the Phoenix Terrace case a few days ago. Could it be that she really solved the case by herself? Someone asked curiously. That's absurd. Yesterday, Lu Jijiu from the Imperial College had personally paid a visit to the House of Duke. He wanted to ask her how she had solved the case. Do you know what she said? Everyone's interest was piqued. What? She had a dream at night. She dreamt that the ghosts of Nainu and Lan Xiang told her. Tell me, isn't that nonsense? The master behind her must have forgotten to tell her the details, so she had to make it up to fool people. Everyone laughed. Maybe this is what the saying goes. Being young may not be good when you grow up. Someone else mocked. Zhongyong is nothing more than that. Next, let's talk about the most discussed case in the capital, the case of the 4th miss of the Qi family. Okay. The storyteller immediately took over and changed the topic. Speaking of the 4th miss of the Qi family, it's another unsolved case. The Lu family is really unlucky. Qi Sen died not long ago, and the 4th miss of the Qi family. The people outside were excited by the story, but they didn't know that in a room on the 2nd floor, the 3 people who had just been mentioned and the 7th prince, Xiao Yunsen, had gathered around a table to play horse games. To be exact, Xiao Minglan, Ning Shu, Xiao Yunsen, and Huiyemo had gathered in a circle to compete with each other. Xia Hoqing was leisurely drinking tea on the side. Occasionally, Huimo would ask him for advice, and he would condescend to open his mouth. Even so, after 4 rounds of gambling, Huimo had won, Xiao Minglan second, Ning Xu neither lost nor won, and Xiao Yunsan was the only one who had lost everything. His face was ashen. Chapter 123. Xiao Minglan took a sip of tea to soothe his throat, then glanced at Ning Xu with dissatisfaction. Lady Ning, next time when you play horse games, don't go easy on me like you did today. It's so unpleasant. If you want to play, you should play with your real skills. Even if I lose, I'll still be happy. Xiao Yunsan, whose face was ashen, immediately turned into a corpse and screamed. What? She Ning Xu actually went easy on him. What did she mean? It meant that the next time he played cards with these people, he would lose everything in the 7th prince's residence. Little royal uncle, you're too mean. You dragged me into the fire pit. Xiao Yunsan sat in the corner and glared at these people with great resentment. Ning Xu smiled and said, Yes, Your Highness Prince Ke. This time Ning Xu was rude. Next time, I'll play with you to the fullest. However, I've finished the 4 rounds of horse games that I promised you. Can you lend me the token? Xiao Yunlan held little Hongyan in his arms and played with her soft white hands. He casually threw something to her and said, Take it. You can return it to me before noon tomorrow. Ning Xu bowed and said, Thank you, Your Highness. We'll take our leave now. Xiao Yunlan waved his hand and hugged his little Hong Yan as he leisurely listened to his precious opera singer sing. Ning Xu stood up and left. Xia Hoqing was a step behind and called Huimo. Huimo immediately understood, and gave the thick stack of banknotes to Xiao Yunsan. Xiao Yunsan's eyes lit up. He immediately put the banknotes back into his arms and ran to Xia Hoqing. You're so righteous. Prince Xiaoho, you're my good brother from now on. Ha 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 ha. Come let me send you off. He raised his hand to pat Xia Hoqing's shoulder, but Xia Hoqing stepped back and said, Your Highness, you're too polite. Xiao Yunsan didn't mind and happily sent Xia Hoqing and Ning Xu out of the chasing clouds and moon chasing pavilion. Back in the pavilion, Bai Xiaoxing was still talking. He talked for a while about Qi Zhuanyu's case, and continued to talk about Ning Xu. After listening for a while, Xiao Yunsan smacked his lips and walked back to the 2nd floor. He said in confusion, Little royal uncle, the case at Phoenix Terrace was solved by Ning Xu herself. Why didn't she come out to clarify it? But instead, she made up her own story and spread the rumor? The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Xiao Minglan held little Hong Yan's hand and drank a small mouthful of warm wine. She said lazily, How much of a limelight that girl had on the Phoenix stage is how much face the imperial family has lost. There are 3 reasons why imperial brother hasn't punished her yet. First, imperial brother's old illness has relapsed, and he doesn't have the energy to punish her. Second, the case has just been closed. If he punished her immediately, the people would think that the imperial family can't tolerate the truth. Third, Her Majesty the Empress pleaded for her life. The combination of these 3 gave her a chance to breathe. This is a rare opportunity, so she has to grasp it. She has to ruin her reputation before His Majesty recovers. The more the people don't believe that she solved the case, the safer she will be. This is to protect herself and also to ask for punishment. Xiao Yunsan was stunned by these words. It took him a while to react. So that's why. So that's why. Then he silently decided that he had to be careful when he saw that Lady Ning in the future. As for Ma Diao, no more fighting, no more fighting. Xiao Minglan grabbed little Red Yan's hand and kissed it. He smiled flirtatiously. The mole under his eyes was lively and fragrant. That girl is very clever. And that Xia Hoqing was also not someone easy to deal with. These 2 people who had nothing to do with each other had coincidentally come together. Sometimes, the heavens were very interesting, weren't they? Chapter 124. In the carriage, Ning Xu carefully looked at the small brass token in her hand and chatted casually. Among all the royal relatives in the capital, only Prince Ke is so playful and interesting. The 7th prince is also a young man, simple and straightforward. It was rare to hear her praise someone and 2 at once. For some reason, Xiaoqing felt a trace of inexplicable unhappiness in his heart. He frowned and said faintly, "Perhaps, but don't forget that the most simple thing in the palace is the skeleton in the dry well, or the one who will become the skeleton." "That's true." Ningxu sighed and nodded. As the princes gradually grew up, the emperor, who used to brandish his sword on horseback, became more and more aged in recent years. A bloody battle for the throne was about to begin. Because of her interference, the third prince was forced out early. But don't forget, the fourth prince Xiao Yunsu, the sixth prince Xiao Yunsen and the others had already shown their desire to compete. Even the youngest, the 14th prince, was already 10 years old. No matter how simple a person was, after a few baptisms of blood, he or she would be forced to change. Her ability was limited. In this life, she only wanted a pair of white hands to protect her, the Duke Ning, peacefully. The carriage leisurely stopped in front of Phoenix Terrace. Ningxu and Huiyemo finished dressing up, jumped off the carriage and showed the token to the guard. Consort Nguyen died in a hurry, and the cause of her death was extremely dishonorable, which made the emperor extremely disgusted. Therefore, she was not allowed to enter the royal mausoleum. Empress Chao made the decision to hastily bury Consort Nguyen in Phoenix Terrace. After the burial, the Phoenix Terrace was completely sealed and never to see the light of day again. This matter was handed over to Prince Ke, Xiao Minglan, who had an idle position in the Ministry of Rites for many years. This was the reason why the card game in the Chasing Cloud and Moon Chasing Tower was held. When the patrolling guard saw Prince Ke's token, they immediately let the two go. In less than an hour, the two returned with a message. The cut is slightly to the right, the wound is slightly hooked downwards, the degree of the cut is from deep to shallow, consistent with the characteristics of suicide. Consort Nguyen should have killed herself. Other than that, there are no other clues. These days I have been thinking about a few questions. First, why did she commit suicide? I heard with my own ears that night a few days ago, she said. With the dragon in my belly, I will be able to rise again. But in the blink of an eye, only 2 days had passed before she committed suicide. Was it really for Yinruahui? Or was there another reason why she had to die? Second, how was the cloud leaf's poison cured? This poison was inexplicable, and the antidote was also silent. What was the mystery? Third, where did the plum blossom kiss in Consort Nguyen's hand come from? She is indeed a descendant of the Zhou family, but if she had the plum blossom kiss in her hand since she was young, she should have taken it out and poisoned it to death when she was at her wit's end, and was humiliated by those old and rich gentry. She should not have waited until now to let it appear. Xiaoqing said. So you suspect that there is another person buried deep in this case? Ningxu nodded. Her soft and slender fingertips randomly drew on the small table in front of her. Empress Chao? It shouldn't be. The person who gave Consort Nguyen the poison must be someone she trusted. Empress Chao and her were like fire and water, especially after Consort Nguyen was pregnant with the dragon's child. There were even rumors in the palace that His Majesty wanted to change the empress. Therefore, if it was given by Empress Chao or someone close to her, Consort Nguyen would definitely not accept it. Instead, she would be extremely cautious. Then who could it be? This person hid behind the entire incident and manipulated everyone, while he escaped unscathed and did not leave a single trace. And this person, could it be the person who had been targeting her and Xiaoqing for many years? Thinking about it, it was simply terrifying. No matter what, the clue of the plum blossom kiss is broken here. She leaned on the small table in front of her and supported her chin with her hand. The word depressed was written all over her snow-white and pretty face. After being busy for several days, just as the dawn was about to appear, a rainstorm suddenly fell and covered the white horizon once again. She could not see the sun. It really made her depressed. Opposite her, Xiaoqing was still calm and indifferent. However, although Qi Huaijin died, Cloudleaf survived. This means that the plum blossom kiss is not a poison without an antidote. Then, your efforts this time were not in vain. It was clearly a matter of life and death, but he comforted her instead. Ningxu was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "Is your highness praising me?" Chapter 125. Guillermo drove the carriage very steadily. The carriage silently passed through the desolate and lonely Phoenix Terrace, crossed the gurgling Nine-Arch Bridge, and then gradually drove to the Juquet Street where people came and went. The pear blossoms on the Juquet Street were in full bloom. The branches were decorated with heavy white flowers, slowly counting the passing carriages and pedestrians. In the quiet and secluded pear blossoms, Ningxu heard Xiaoqing slowly say, "You can say so." Ningxu immediately held up a smiling face. "If so, then shouldn't your highness give me some rewards?" Since she was doing things in a low-key way, then she should do things in a high-profile way. She must not miss the rewards that she should ask for. Xiaoqing raised his lips and said, "Oh." She thought that according to his temper he would reply to her. Whimsical. She did not expect that after a moment of silence she would hear him say lightly, "What do you want?" This made Ningxu somewhat surprised. At this time, a gust of wind blew. Pieces of snow-white pear blossoms jumped down from the branches and fell on the pedestrians. Some of the petals sneaked in from the corner of the carriage curtain that was blown up by the wind and fell on Xiaoqing's black clothes. A few days ago he appeared in front of the Phoenix Terrace in a black outfit, causing countless people in the imperial city to compete to imitate him. But the same black outfit on some people looked good, but on some people, it looked like a funeral. One of the petals seemed to be very human, and also liked his beauty. It gently touched the back of his hand, turned around, and touched the tip of his tall nose. It was somewhat irritating as it wantonly fluttered in front of him. Ningxu subconsciously reached out to help him catch it, but another hand also reached out and held it at the same time. One hand was warm and soft, the other was slightly cold. But both of them were stunned at the same time. The wind outside the curtain was still blowing, and more small white petals blew in. It blew through her waist-length hair, and also blew through the black silk cloth in front of his eyes, and finally entangled with each other. Inside the carriage, it was completely silent. Thinking about how this person was obsessed with cleanliness and didn't like to be touched by others, Ningxu almost immediately pulled her hand back. She smiled awkwardly, then lifted the curtain and threw the pear blossom in her palm out. She said, "This street full of pear blossoms is beautiful, but in the end it's too small and annoying." Then she added, "I heard that His Highness is about to choose a consort." The warm and soft touch from earlier still lingered on his palm for a short while. His heart unconsciously moved. So, Ningxu did not know why she had said those words. After she finished speaking, she felt a bit regretful. Xiaoqing chose his Shitzi consort. What did it have to do with her? What right did she have to interrupt? She could only laugh dryly and continue. "When the time comes, if your highness finds a good match, please don't forget this little girl. Please allow this little girl to come to your residence and drink a toast." It was unknown which word had offended His Highness the heir, but the carriage suddenly stopped. Ningxu was invited out, and then arrogantly drove away. The reason was very good. It was not on the way. From Vermilion Bird Street to Duke Ning was a full 10 li Ningxu. Fortunately, Vermilion Bird Street was not far from the East Market. Thinking about how she had not had the time to play with Ji, or because she had been busy solving the mystery, Ningxu decided to go to the East Market to buy some of Ji Er's favorite candied fruits to coax him. After the Phoenix Terrace case, the East Market returned to its former bustle. The magic trick stall was full of people. In the middle of the crowd, the stall owner was trying to figure out a new trick. Ningxu watched with interest for a while, then continued to walk forward. She saw Ji Er's favorite bamboo dragonfly, and saw a stall selling candied fruits. She bought 2 sticks and decided to give one to Ji Er and the other to herself. After she finished buying, she walked a few steps and turned back, deciding to buy another stick. Finally, she walked to the East Market's most famous candied fruit shop, but was suddenly stopped by someone. "This young lady, please wait a moment." The voice behind her was hurried and slightly panting, but unexpectedly, it was somewhat familiar. Ningxu responded and turned around. She did not expect to see no one else but Cloud Leaf, who had just recovered from a serious illness. Because of the huge poison, Cloud Leaf had lost a lot of weight. His face was still pale, but his spirit was slowly recovering. "I'm really sorry for being rude, young lady." Cloud Leaf seemed to have chased Ningxu for a long time. There was a thin layer of sweat on his forehead. After he stopped Ningshu, he apologetically bowed and said in a panic, Please don't worry, young lady. I'm not a lecher who wants to strike up a conversation with you. It's just that I had a serious illness a while ago and lost all my memories. I only vaguely remember that I liked a young lady. We were about to get married, but something happened and that young lady left. I asked all the servants and relatives around me, and they all said that it was my dream. There was no such person, but I clearly remember. I'm going back to my hometown in Jiaoyang tomorrow to continue recuperating. Today is my last day in the capital. Just now in front of the magic trick stall, I felt that young lady's back looked very familiar, so I rashly stopped you. After he finished speaking in a panic, he shyly and hopefully raised his head to look at Ningshu. Excuse me, have we met before? His eyes were filled with the same sincerity and straightforwardness as before. Ningshu was startled, and then she slowly bent her knees to greet him. She replied with the most polite and calm smile. Young master, you've mistaken me for someone else. We've never met before. As if he didn't believe it, Cloud Leaf opened his mouth and asked again, Really? Ningshu nodded solemnly, yes. Then she turned and walked into the candied fruit shop. Behind her, Cloud Leaf showed an extremely disappointed expression. He stood there and looked at her for a long time until a servant came and dragged him away. Young master, why are you here? Go back quickly. You're going back to your hometown in Jiaoyang tomorrow. Madam must be very worried that you ran out without permission. If there's anything you want to buy, I'll buy it for you. As for the young lady you're talking about, there really isn't. Cloud Leaf let the servant take him away in a daze. He always felt that he had once loved a young lady deeply. He thought that he could hold hands with that young lady until their hair turned white, but in the end, it was just a big dream. He woke up from the dream. The people in the dream who should have brushed shoulders with each other were destined to brush shoulders with each other. And the person who shouldn't have brushed shoulders with each other. Ningshu finished buying the candied fruit and came out. She found that her hands were full of things, and she couldn't even lift them up. She was worried about whether she should hire a carriage, but where could she hire one in this busy city? Then she saw the carriage that had just left her silently parked not far away. Her eyes lit up and she immediately walked up and lifted the curtain. I guess that your highness wouldn't be so heartless as to leave my daughter behind. My daughter just bought the best candied fruit in the capital and brought one for you. Here, your highness, please condescend to taste it. Chapter 126. The air was humid and heavy, making it hard for people to breathe, as if they were in a steamer. The little eunuch Lian Song, who was guarding outside Funing Palace, was just about to quietly loosen his collar and take a breath when he heard head steward Zhao cough softly beside him. He immediately retracted his hand and continued to stand there respectfully, like a loyal and lifeless stone statue. This was one of the highest places in the entire imperial palace. Following Song Chueshuan's gaze, one could see many overlapping and complicated palaces. Those usually dazzling golden glazed roof tiles, under the dark clouds that were so heavy that they were almost black, appeared lifeless. He was silently in a daze. He had lived in the imperial city for 14 years, and had never seen such abnormal weather in spring. However, whether it was the dark clouds above or the faint thunder in the sky, they all indicated that a storm was coming. This year was truly a demonic year. He only heard about imperial concubine Qi's maternal family during lunch. The fourth young miss of the Qi family, Qi Zhaoyu, who often came to the palace, had recently been pestered by a wolf demon. Thinking about it made people tremble. Should he learn from the other seniors and go to the Buddhist temple to ask for a peace talisman to keep him safe? If he really had to go, should he go to Wanfo Temple or Dexianghua Temple? Dexianghua Temple. Imperial concubine Qi had made a name for herself in Wanfo Temple, but she had fallen in only 4 months. It could be seen that Wanfo Temple was not that effective. However, he vaguely heard that the third prince had once paid his respects in Dexianghua Temple and asked for a lot. Now he had fallen to the fate of being imprisoned in the Ministry of Justice's prison. It could be seen that Dexianghua Temple was just fishing for fame. He had secretly asked his master why the third prince had done such a foolish thing when he was already the eldest son of the emperor. His master looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot and said, "Although the third prince is the eldest son of the emperor, His Majesty has never appointed him as the crown prince. What does this mean?" "It means that His Majesty is not too satisfied with him." As the other princes became adults one after another, the third prince naturally could not remain calm, and could only make a risky move. As for ending up like this, that was his fate. Liansong, oh Liansong, your brain is only as big as an almond. How can you understand the matters in the palace? In the future, don't think about it anymore, and don't ask random questions. Only by doing your job well, will you be able to keep your almond-sized brain. He nodded and felt that his master was right. After he finished his recollection, he sighed softly in his heart. Originally, he could take a break every 10 days, but because the frequency of His Majesty's old illness relapsing was increasing, he had already been on duty for many days in a row. Everyone was busy and worried. He really did not know when the next break would be. So tired, so tired. Just as he was imagining things in his head, suddenly, "All of you die." A loud roar came from within Funing Palace Hall, followed by a series of rapid breathing. Manager Zhao hurriedly called out in a low voice, "Quick, quick!" and led the group of palace maids and eunuchs into the hall to serve. Some handed out warm handkerchiefs, some wiped his body, and some changed his clothes. In short, they were all very busy. Everyone was very familiar with their own tasks because in recent days, the emperor had already lost count of how many nightmares he had had in the past few days. Liansong deftly helped the emperor change his clothes. Then he heard a familiar voice and a familiar fragrance walk in. "Your Majesty, did you have nightmares again?" His voice was full of worry. It was Consort Chi. She was dressed in a red palace dress, gorgeous and beautiful. She held a bowl of boiling medicine and sat in front of the dragon bed. She scooped up a spoonful and blew on it. Then, she personally drank a mouthful in front of His Majesty, and carefully fed it to His Majesty. "This medicine has just been brewed. I personally watched over it. The medicine is at its best right now. I will serve you." Chapter 127. Seeing Consort Chi's behavior, the emperor slowly opened his mouth and swallowed the medicine. Ever since Consort Nguyen was banished to the cold palace, Consort Chi regained favor, and became the emperor's most favored concubine in the imperial palace. However, Liansong thought His Majesty's beloved concubines changed back and forth, but the most powerful one was still the empress. Because no matter how the other concubines in the imperial harem fought, in the end, only she firmly sat in the middle palace, even if she rarely came to disturb His Majesty's bedroom. Master had already warned me. How could I still think about it? I should be beaten. Liansong hurriedly ordered herself to stop and obediently stood to the side, waiting for Consort Chi to finish feeding His Majesty the medicine and take the empty bowl. After serving His Majesty the medicine, Consort Chi took a warm handkerchief from a palace maid and wiped the medicine juice from His Majesty's mouth. After finishing a series of things, she stopped and looked at her monarch with her gentle eyes. She said with heartache, "The group of quacks in the Imperial Medical Bureau are too useless. They've treated you for so many days, but you still haven't gotten better. You've been in deep thought every day and repeatedly woke up from nightmares. It's really harmful to your dragon body. This concubine is really worried." Grabbing Consort Chi's hand and kissing it, the emperor said in a slightly tired voice, "My beloved concubine is considerate." For months ago, at the festival of bathing the Buddha, he looked quite energetic. But in just a few short months, his hair had turned white. The emperor was old. Consort Chi leaned into the emperor's arms. "This concubine has been thinking for a long time. Your old illness hasn't acted up for several years, but this year, it acted up again and again. It must be that slut who killed herself." Her filthy cold air collided with the auspicious purple air in the imperial harem. Therefore, this concubine thinks that it's best for us to hold a happy occasion to drive away the cold air and welcome back the purple air. Only then can the imperial harem return to its former peace. That way, perhaps your old nightmare illness will be cured. What kind of happy occasion? Consort Chi pretended to be careless and said, "This concubine remembers that not long ago, you were discussing the marriage of Heir Xiaoho with the old concubines. Later, because of the Phoenix Terrace case, it was temporarily delayed. Now that the case is closed, why don't we? We understand what you mean. However, the position of the South Pacifying King has always been extremely special in this court, so the choice of the heir consort is truly not a simple matter. It needs to be carefully considered. Of course, I know about this. So 3 days ago, I specially invited the imperial astronomer to perform a divination on the marriage of heir Xiahou. The result of the divination will come out tonight. At that time, it will be up to heaven to decide which miss is most suitable to be heir Xiahou's wife. No one can interfere. How about your majesty make a decision based on the result? Beloved concubine has thought it through thoroughly. Then let's follow beloved concubine's plan. This concubine thanks your majesty for your trust. This concubine will definitely handle this matter properly, and will not disappoint your majesty. Concubine Qi bowed deeply and her heart couldn't help but overflow with uncontrollable excitement. Xiahou Qing's marriage was something that countless people in the imperial harem were scheming about. Not for anything else, but because of the powerful influence of the South Pacifying King's estate that he represented. If Xiahou could successfully marry into the South Pacifying King's estate as heir concubine, then her Su'er's throne would be just around the corner. So she had been painstakingly scheming these days for the sake of the answer of heaven's will. And she believed that the final answer would not disappoint her. Your Majesty, Nyang Nyang, the divination from the imperial astronomer has come out. Concubine Qi's excited voice quickly sounded in the outer hall. This concubine will bring it for your majesty. Concubine Qi walked over with a smile, and raised her slender white hand. She picked up the small divination in the center of the large tray, and flipped it to the back. In the next moment, there was a sudden clap of thunder in the sky. Concubine Qi looked at the divination in her hand and sucked in a breath. Outside the hall, the rainstorm that had been dense for a long time fell without warning. The sound of the torrential rain drowned out the sound of Qi Fei's trembling heartbeat. It also completely drowned out the sound of the talisman falling from her hand. She almost lost her voice and said, how could this be? Her face that had been as beautiful as a flower a moment ago was now filled with shock and fear. It was as if the thickest peony in her garden had suddenly been destroyed by the torrential rain. The emperor frowned in surprise. What is it? That divination had coincidentally fallen by Liansong's feet. Liansong did his best to suppress his curiosity, ordering himself not to look. But in the end he couldn't resist and secretly glanced at it. It was that glance that made his breathing stop. It was as if his throat was being choked and he couldn't breathe. Then his entire body couldn't help but tremble. Because on that divination was the result of the heir concubine selection. It wasn't the name of a certain family's young miss, but 8 large words. Deranged and crazy, died an unnatural death. Chapter 128. A night of rain soaked the entire capital. It was such a heavy rain that it almost made people think that the entire sky would collapse and crush the 3,000 prosperous places in the world. Fortunately, in the latter half of the night, God seemed to have vented most of his inexplicable temper, and the rain gradually lessened. On the morning of the second day, there was only a fine drizzle that was as light as a cow's hair. It gently fell on the pond where the lotus had already revealed its sharp edges, on the pear-white heart where the peach blossoms had all fallen, and on the thick green banana leaves that had been washed by the water, rustle rustle, drip drip drip, lively and light, the most suitable for sleeping. Thus Ning Shu opened her eyes and looked out of the window. Seeing that the sky was not too late, she lazily turned over and decided to take a short nap. Ever since the previous case was closed, her nerves, which had been stretched taut for more than half a month, could finally take a breather. She gave Zigui and Lian Xiao each a long holiday. She even claimed that she was sick and did not go out. She hid in the Fu all day and stole half a day of leisure, thinking of her ambition when she was reborn, to casually find someone to marry in this life, and endure the curse of 17 years old, to protect her family and then be at ease to be a rich and idle person and enjoy life. Who would have thought that God did not want her to have an easy time? Not to mention the female general who jinxes her husband, the reincarnation of a heavenly fox. There was also the plum blossom kiss, this unique poison, and was even forced to be tied together with that unfathomable Xiaoho Qing. AI, life is not easy, live and cherish it. She just moved a little when someone gently lifted the curtain and whispered, "Young miss." It was Fu Ling. "What is the matter?" Just waking up. Ning Shu's voice sounded a little lazy and innocent. Fu Ling said, "His Highness the Sixth Prince came to the residence to visit again, and just asked about you." Hearing that name, Ning Shu frowned. "You said that I had caught a cold a few days ago and had not recovered and was not suitable to receive guests. But this reason has been said 3 times, and His Highness the Sixth Prince said, he must see you today before leaving." Ning Shu had a headache as she pulled the blanket over her head, and gave a long sigh before she resigned herself to her fate and got up with Fu Ling's help. In front of the Yuji Pavilion, there was a lotus pond. The lotus flowers in the pond had not yet bloomed, and only a small tip was revealed. Fortunately, there were a few weeping willows around the pond, making the pond not so lonely. It was still drizzling, the water splashing into the pond and hitting the tiles above Xiao Yuni's head, dripping down the eaves and onto the ground, making him frown in annoyance. Xiao Yuni had been waiting in the pavilion for 2 whole hours, and was prepared to continue waiting. He had to see Ning Shu today. Logically speaking, he was an outsider, and it was inappropriate for him to stay here and ask to see a girl who had not yet been betrothed. However, he was really insistent, and the public house could not just kick him out of the house, so they could only send someone to serve him. Dozens of servants and maids stood around him, but no one dared to get too close to him. It was said that fresh blood was the best weapon to speed up a person's growth. Ever since the great victory over the bandits at Yanxi Mountain, where he personally sent the bloody head of the bandit leader to His Majesty, Xiao Yuni received great praise from His Majesty, and was ordered to lead 30,000 Yang Chengwai. No one would have thought that this down-and-out prince, who used to have frostbites all over his hands, would climb to such an enviable and surprising position at such a fast speed. And after bathing in the blood, he became colder and colder, like a sharp knife full of murderous intent. Hearing Ning Shu's footsteps, the arrogance in Xiao Yuni's eyes quickly faded and he turned around. Ning Shu did not plan to be entangled with Xiao Yuni for long today, so she casually picked a snow-white robe and put it on. Even her hair was tied up in the simplest hairstyle, and she did not use any rouge or face powder. She was like a lotus that just came out of the water, pure and elegant. But when she appeared in front of Xiao Yuni, it still made his heart tremble slightly. His Shu, was already a national beauty without any face powder. If she dressed up carefully, he did not know how beautiful she would be. The funny thing was, the only time he saw her dressed up, the fiery red wedding dress she was wearing was not for him. Chapter 129. The resentment in his heart surged like a tide, and Xiao Yuni wanted to ask her, why was she avoiding him recently? How was he like a scourge that she had to avoid him? But Ning Shu was one step faster and spoke first. Crossing her hands in front of her chest, she bent her knees and bowed deeply to him. "My daughter greets Your Highness the Sixth Prince. May Your Highness spare my daughter's life." Xiao Yuni's expression immediately changed and he frowned. "What did you say? When did I ever want to hurt you, let alone take your life?" He thought for a while and immediately explained. "If you still mind that I deliberately stopped you that day at Third Brother's residence and almost made you reveal your flaws, I can explain it to you. That day, I was really drunk. I didn't mean it when I was drunk. I didn't know that you were investigating a case that day, so there was some misunderstanding in your heart. That's why I did what I did. It wasn't true. After that, I immediately stopped when I sobered up." But he saw Ning Shu slowly shaking her head. "That's not the only thing my daughter is talking about. Don't tell me that Your Highness doesn't know that you have been pushing me into the abyss of death?" In the drizzle, her voice was as cold as the drizzle. It seemed to be close at hand, but it seemed to be far away. Xiao Yuni frowned deeper, as if he was completely confused by her words. "Sure, what do you mean by this? When did I want to put you to death?" He approached her, but she retreated and distanced herself step by step, not hesitating to fall into the rain. Fu Ling saw her drenched in the rain, and hurriedly raised the sky-blue oil paper umbrella, but it was brushed away by her. The fine drizzle quickly fell on her body. The rain didn't seem heavy, but it quickly soaked her face completely, slowly condensing into droplets of water that dripped down along her small, snow-white chin. Xiao Yunyi's heart was filled with a trace of heartache and anger. What are you doing? If you have anything to say, then say it in the pavilion. Don't catch a cold from the rain. But she shook her head and stubbornly said, Your Highness should know. Seeing that Ningxu was willing to let the rain wet her hair and clothes to stay away from him, Xiao Yunyi clenched his fists tightly, almost squeezing out words filled with anger and resentment from between his teeth. What should I know? I only know that before you turned 15, you clearly didn't have the appearance of wanting to keep me 1,000 miles away like you do now. Don't try to fool me with some random Fei Wan, I don't even know her. She raised her head in the rain. The fine drizzle gradually moistened her feather-like eyelashes, making her look cold and heavy. You should know about my reputation and your status. You should know about the Empress's dissatisfaction with me and her expectations for you. You should also know that after the Phoenix Terrace case, although His Majesty didn't say it out loud, he was still afraid of me in his heart. But you still come to our Duke's mansion again and again, which is tantamount to reminding His Majesty and the Empress over and over again that there is a thorn in their side, Ningxu. Aren't you pushing me towards the edge of the cliff step by step? Yes, the wind and rain can indeed make me catch a cold, but no matter how severe the cold is, it will only last for 30 to 50 days at most. I will be fine after taking a few medicine. But your actions are much more terrifying than the wind and rain to me. The rain outside the pavilion was like silk, and her voice was like orchids. But the sound of thunder from last night suddenly rang in Xiao Yunyi's ears, causing his doubts and resentment to crumble in an instant. He was almost at a loss as to what to do. I never thought of it that way. Sure, you should know me. Ever since I made that promise to you 11 years ago, I swore to fulfill it and give you the best life. I never thought of harming you. Could it be that you really can't feel what I'm thinking? In the drizzle, Ningxu sighed softly. Previously in the Phoenix Algae Palace, Your Highness knelt down and begged Her Majesty to spare my life for me. To be honest, I was not indifferent. But I'm afraid you don't know what Her Majesty said when she heard the palace servant report that you were kneeling outside the door and refused to get up. She said, I was still hesitating whether to kill you or not. But Yunyi has always been sensible and has never dared to disobey me. You are the exception. She also said, It seems that if I don't punish you, it will be unreasonable. Your Highness, you are indeed doing everything for my good. But your actions are actually only moving yourself. Chapter 130. A sigh was like a white silk, strangling his throat, tearing Xiao Yunyi's voice apart. Moved myself. His eyes trembled deeply, several strong emotions surging in his chest at the same time, colliding and fighting, causing him to be stunned and unable to react. This Xiao Yunyi did not have the high-spirited spirit he had in the imperial court, did not have the fierceness and cruelty he had when he was waving his sword. Instead, he looked a little pitiful. Ningxu did not want to say it like this, but he was so stubborn that she had no choice but to use the strong medicine. Right now, I am in a sea of fire, and the only thing I can rely on to survive is the thin rope above the sea of fire. Your Highness's closeness to me is like a knife that wants to kill me. As long as Your Highness gets closer to me, the blade of the knife will get closer to the rope under my feet. If you force yourself to approach, the blade will mercilessly cut off the rope, causing me to fall into the raging flames, allowing the flames to lick my skin and burn my flesh and internal organs. In the end, my entire body will be turned into charcoal, and I will die without a complete corpse. So if Your Highness wants me to live, please stay further away from me, even further away. This way, I won't let down the shallow friendship I had when I was 5 years old, when I boldly spoke up for Your Highness. With that, she turned to leave, but she heard a gust of wind and her hand was grabbed by someone, pulling her back into the pavilion. Beside her, Fu Ling and the others were shocked and wanted to stop him. But Xiao Yunyi's actions were too fast and too fierce. Ningxu was caught off guard, and her back was pressed against the pillar of the pavilion. She was forced to look up and meet Xiao Yunyi's burning eyes. Do you think that I abandoned my mother and wanted to fight for that position entirely for myself? Xiao Yunyi gritted his teeth and asked in a suppressed and painful voice by her ear. His chest rose and fell violently. His eyes, which clearly reflected her figure, were bloodshot with anger. After so many years, I still remember that year when I knelt in front of Imperial Concubine Chi's palace. There were so many people coming and going in the palace, one by one, walked in front of me, but no one stood up for me. Even my biological mother, Injawi, only dared to use a handkerchief to wipe her tears after hearing about it. She quietly said to me, "Mother is useless, unable to protect you." Then, when Consort Chi's sedan arrived, she hurriedly knelt down to pay her respects, not daring to say a single word for me. He took a deep breath, as if he was immersed in the memories that were half bright and half dark. "There was only a little you. You blinked your big, innocent eyes and looked at me for a long time. Then, you jumped down from your mother's knee and stood in front of me. But after you helped me clear my name, you were almost charged with the crime of disrespect by Imperial Concubine Chi. Do you know what I was thinking at that time? What I was thinking was, not only is my mother incompetent, I am also incompetent. In this world, there is only one person who dares to stand up for me, but will be punished because of me. I am simply too incompetent. On that day, I swore in my heart that I would never let this happen again. One day in the future, I will definitely protect you behind me. In this world, there are millions of people. No matter if it is a person or a beast, a god or a ghost in hell, no one will be able to hurt you. But you actually said that I was only moved by myself." His eyes were completely red. Every time he looked at her, every time he looked into her eyes, it was like burning charcoal. In both her previous and current lives, this was the first time he had said these words from the bottom of his heart to her. The deep affection in those words made her unable to control her shock and fear. It was as if he really, deeply placed her in the bottom of his heart. If she had not experienced the pain of that life, perhaps she really would have believed it. Unfortunately. "Your Highness, what you mean is that you fought with all your might for me." After a short silence, Ningxu took a light breath. When she looked up again, her eyes had regained their clarity. "Then may I ask your Highness, if I ask you to stop and turn back now, to be an idle prince, like His Highness Prince Ku, to spend all day reciting the wind, drinking wine, drawing eyebrows and putting on concubine's makeup, not caring about court affairs and only enjoying life, would you be willing?" Xiao Yuni said excitedly. "How do you know I'm not?" The word "I'm willing" almost slipped out of his mouth, but when this short word reached his mouth, it was like a hard stone had suddenly appeared and firmly blocked his mouth, making him unable to make a sound. In this short moment of hesitation, Ningxu had the chance to withdraw her wrist. She took 3 steps back and smiled faintly at him. "It seems like you and I both have an answer." Chapter 131. It was a thin layer of paper with the world's most exquisite patterns drawn on it. It was almost mesmerizing, but Ningxu broke it with a light poke. The wind and snow hidden behind the paper window slapped Xiao Yuni mercilessly like a slap on his face, causing his face to turn pale and full of embarrassment. He was at a loss for what to do. Mixed emotions filled his chest, making him feel embarrassed, introspective and conflicted. He had always thought that he fought for that throne with all his might for Ningxu. But why was it that when Ningxu asked him to give up, those 2 simple words, he could not say it out loud? By his ear, Ningxu's voice was like a gust of wind that could not be any lighter, blowing into his ears through the clouds, the sea of flowers, and the misty snowy peaks. "Your Highness, you thought that everything you did was to help me, but in reality, it was to help the powerless you back then." The fog in front of him dispersed and Xiao Yuni's eyebrows trembled. The word hypocrite drilled into his mind cruelly and straightforwardly, sentencing himself to death. So it was like this. No. He really had her in his heart. It wasn't all for himself. But more thoughts surged into his mind. If he really gave up for her, then what was all the humiliation he had suffered since he was young? What was it when he abandoned his mother 11 years ago, and was looked down upon and despised by others? What was it when he endured and hid like a wolf all these years, preparing and plotting? Was it all in vain? No, it was impossible. All these thoughts merged together, and turned into a dark flame burning in his heart. He gritted his teeth and looked at Ningxu in pain. "Why do you have to force me to make a choice? Can't I? Do I want both? 5 words were about to come out, but in the end, they were stuck in his mouth, unable to leave his mouth. Because now that everything had been exposed by Ning Shu, he knew clearly that it was impossible. If he insisted on having her, then he would definitely make his royal father and royal mother unhappy. The result would either be her death, or he would be completely thrown out of that stairway. If he insisted on having the throne, then like what she said just now, every step he took now was the knife that would kill her. Unless she was willing to be a sparrow raised in a golden cage by him, obediently hiding in the cage, silently enduring all the malice in the world. Not fighting, not arguing, and not making a fuss. Silently enduring and enduring. Until he ascended to the supreme throne, he would then wash away all the grievances and injustice for her. But stop joking. If she had such a mediocre and cowardly personality, she wouldn't have stood up for him 11 years ago when she was only 5 years old. Then there would be no possibility of them even knowing each other. There was no way to get the best of both worlds, not letting down Buddha and not letting down Qing. In the end, it was an extravagant hope with no way out. Looking at Xiao Yuni, who was completely lost, Ning Shu couldn't help but think of the last moment of that life, when they met with swords and spears at the city gates. She was guarding the high city gates and looking down. He was on the warhorse that was attacking the city, holding the blood-stained emperor's sword in his hand. His red eyes looked at her in confusion as he asked softly, "Why did we become like this?" A feeling of pain that she hadn't felt for a long time secretly slipped out, making her sigh helplessly. Look, why bother? Walking the same path again. Was her head kicked by a donkey? This 300-year-old ghost, wouldn't he become the laughing stock of the entire underworld when he returned? Sure, wait a minute, I will definitely think of a way. The intense conflict made his voice hoarse. He hurriedly reached out to pull her back and defend himself. But she heard a servant suddenly jogging over to report. "Eldest miss, the Lord Pacifying Manor has sent you a letter, asking for your help." Chapter 132. His words made Ning Shu feel like she had been pardoned. She heaved a sigh of relief in her heart, and immediately turned to take the invitation from the servant, before she bowed politely to Xiao Yuni. "I have other matters to attend to now, so please forgive me for taking my leave first." When she brushed past Xiao Yuni, Ning Shu's footsteps paused slightly. "Your Highness risked your life and went into battle. It wasn't easy for you to get to your current position after killing those bandits in Flame Breath Mountain. It wasn't easy for you to get to your current position. I sincerely pray that your Highness's wish will come true, and you will be able to ascend the throne." She didn't know how much of his words were true and how much of it was false. Even if it was only a little, she was willing to sincerely pray for him. As for the rest, the eagle soared into the sky, the fish soared to the bottom, and the bridge went their own way. This was supposed to be the best ending for them in this life. The rain had quietly stopped and her snow-white dress rippled along with her footsteps. It was as if she was walking on snow and couldn't be chased. Looking at her slim back as she walked out of his sight, Xiao Yuni was in a trance. After a long time, he clenched his fists until the veins on the back of his hand were exposed. Then he softly and aggressively said his lifelong obsession. "You said that I'm harming you by getting close to you. Then why do you keep getting close to Xiaoqing? Won't he harm you? In the end, it's just an excuse for you to reject me. Sure, since you sincerely pray for me then. I want both you and the world. Even if there is no path, I will use the sword in my hand and the bone in my finger to carve out a path. Even if I break your wings. In this life, you can only grow old with me. Others can only dream about it." Outside Duke Ning. "Master, the invitation has been sent in." Jiusi finished his work and opened the curtain, reporting respectfully to the young master inside. Xiaoho nodded and replied, Then he coughed softly. Guillermo, who was beside him, immediately acted as if he was facing a great enemy. He took out a green porcelain bottle and poured out a pill. "Master, please take the medicine." The cool breeze in the middle of the night in April might not mean anything to other people, but his master had been ill for many years and couldn't bear even the slightest breeze. That day, after Lady Ning fell into the water, the prince gave her a cloak. After returning to the prince's residence, His coughing relapsed. Lady Ning had been sick for 3 days, but his Shitsi Yi had been sick until now. A few days ago, when he went to Phoenix Terrace to examine Consort Nguyen's corpse, he forced himself to endure the pain. Instead, his coughing became worse, and that night he spat out a mouthful of blood. After lying in bed for a few more days, he felt better today. So when he heard him cough again, Hui Mo immediately became alert. He wanted to wrap his master up with the most precious thing in the world. Hui Mo endured it and finally couldn't help but complain in a low voice. "Your Highness, you can't do that again next time." It's not like His Highness didn't know his own body. He really didn't cherish it at all. After taking the medicine, he put the teacup in his hand into his mouth and took a sip. Then he slowly put it down. Under the black fox fur, Xiaoqing's skin became more and more pale like snow. It doesn't matter. This body is just a matter of a few days earlier or later. Why take it to heart? His cold self-mockery made Huimo's heart ache, but he also knew that it was the truth. He only hated himself for being incompetent. He had learned so many poison and medical books in vain, but he still didn't have the ability to cure the plum blossom kiss and save His Highness's life. Why was he called Huimo? He should be called trash. Huimo's mood couldn't help but become depressed. Chapter 133. I think that since Mr. Cloudleaf can come back from the dead, there must be a way to cure the poison. Although we can't solve it for the time being, with the help of a smart person like Lady Ning, I believe that we can solve the mystery of the plum blossom kiss smoothly. By then, you will be able to recover as before. Jiuxi gently pulled Huimo and motioned him to look out of the window. Huimo was a young man after all. His attention was immediately diverted, and he looked out of the window. Soon he caught a glimpse of light and immediately said, "Master, Lady Ning is here." Just now the snow-white cloak was stained with rain. Ning Shu hurriedly went back to change and rushed out. She didn't even have time to dry her hair. At this time, there was still some moisture in her hair, which made her hair darker. Her face was as white as snow and her lips were as red as vermilion. She was particularly agile. Hearing the sound of Ning Shu's footsteps, Xiaoqing said, Slowly, a vague figure was outlined in his mind. The figure should be just at the height of his chin. That night, he threw the cloak to her to wrap around her body. She seemed to be holding it tightly and slowly. Step by step, she walked carefully so that the cloak would not fall to the ground. She should also have a pair of very clever eyes. Every time she came up with a clever idea in her mind, a bright light would flow out from her eyes. She looked as delicate as an orchid, but there was an unimaginable tenacity hidden in her eyes. Even if she was in a sea of fire, or under the questioning eyes of 300,000 people, she had never been afraid. Other than that, he knew nothing, but he seemed to know a lot of things unconsciously. Ning Shu, who was being painted by him in his mind, stepped out of the gate of the Duke's mansion. Her eyes quickly found the familiar figure in the black fox fur coat in the carriage and smiled slightly. "Greetings, Your Highness. May I know why Your Highness is looking for my daughter today?" She didn't waste time to be polite and asked directly. She knew that unless there was something urgent, Xiaoqing wouldn't have sent her an invitation without notifying her in advance. Hearing her voice, the brush and ink in Xiaoqing's mind suddenly stopped and dissipated like smoke. Separated by the black brocade in front of him, he looked in her direction and casually waved his hand. "Last time, I heard that you were very interested in my concubine selection. Today, I will satisfy you. Let's get in the car." Ah. This sentence made Ning Shu reveal an extremely startled expression. She thought it was something urgent, but she didn't expect it to be this. However, His Highness has already decided on the heir consort? So fast? As far as she knew, the higher the rank of Marquis in the manor, the more etiquette they had to go through when it came to marriage. It wasn't uncommon to spend a year or so just to arrange the marriage, not to mention the large amount of red tape and other formalities that followed. If there was even the slightest mistake, it wasn't impossible to start all over again. It had only been a few days since their last chat, and he had already decided? Her mind was filled with shock, but he was still as calm as before. He fiddled with the bone in his hand that had long been flattened and knocked on the table. It hasn't been decided yet, but it will be soon. Today, I am waiting for you to choose one for me. The previous sentence made Ningxu startled, and this sentence made Ningxu completely dumbfounded. I will choose. Ningxu almost thought that she had misheard. Your Highness isn't joking, right? This joke was so big that it wasn't funny at all. But she saw Xiaoqing's lips curl up slightly, as if he was talking about someone else's matter, and it had nothing to do with him. He said casually, why not? Chapter 134. Ningxu's eyebrows moved slightly and she said, there are millions of women in this world. There are plump swallows in thin rings, weak willows swaying in the wind, passionate and talented women, elegant and graceful. I don't know what kind of woman your Highness likes. If I randomly choose someone that your Highness is not satisfied with, I'm afraid that I won't be able to bear the consequences. Therefore, I ask your Highness to find someone else. Xiaoqing said without restraint, don't worry. No matter who you choose, it doesn't make any difference to me. I don't need to worry about blaming you. Ningxu hesitated and said, then what if I choose the most generous and fat of all the young ladies, with an appearance that is like salt, without talent and without interest? Xiaoqing continued to be calm. It doesn't matter. If she has no talent and no virtue, likes to indulge in flights of fancy, and does all kinds of mischief all day, your Highness won't mind? Xiaoqing's expression was still calm. It doesn't matter. Ningxu smiled. He clearly chose the person she would spend all day with. If it was someone else, their heart would be filled with eagerness. He, on the other hand, didn't look like he was choosing a concubine. Instead, he looked like he was casually choosing a painting to hang on the wall. Therefore, she casually said, what if it's someone like me, who has a bad luck in her life? She thought that he would continue to maintain his cold and silent appearance. She didn't expect him to frown, as if he was extremely disgusted. Then he spat out 4 solemn words from his lips and teeth. Impossible. Ningxu froze for a moment, then she smiled awkwardly and said, your Highness, don't worry. I was just joking. In the palace, the young ladies carefully selected by His Majesty, the Empress, and the Grand Imperial Concubine must be of good character and appearance. How could there be someone like me who has a bad luck? TSK, she knew that her good reputation was spread far and wide, and no one would welcome her if she married into any family. However, they were friends who had solved the same case, so he should at least give her some face. If he didn't give her any face, it would be too embarrassing. Upon hearing her words, Xiaoqing's frown deepened. He pursed his lips and wanted to say something, but he didn't know how to respond. At the side, Juicy hurriedly said, Lady Ning, please don't misunderstand. My family's heir doesn't mean to be disrespectful. Instead he thought for a moment but didn't know how to phrase it. In the end, he pushed the brocade box on the table in front of Ningxu and said respectfully in a low voice, Lady Ning will understand after you see it. The black brocade box was pushed in front of her. Ningxu glanced at Jiuxi's tense face. Immediately, her joking expression changed. She picked up the brocade box and slowly opened it. Then, she saw the small and exquisite token. She was caught off guard and her eyes widened. This is, Xiaoqing's low voice slowly sounded in her ear. Last night, the imperial astronomer obeyed imperial concubine Qi's orders, and performed a divination for me to choose a consort. In the end, which family's young miss was the best choice for the heir's consort? The result of the divination was not the birth characters of any family, nor was it the family name. Instead, it was the curse of these 8 characters that flew out of nowhere: madness, madness, and violent death. Can you guess what this token means? My heir's consort hasn't been chosen yet, but her fate has already been decided. Tell me, who should I choose? There was a hint of a smile in his voice, but it was the kind that was exceptionally cold. What was dozens of times colder than his voice was the shocking red characters in front of Ningxu. Each character seemed to have been carefully drawn with every stroke, so thick that it seemed like it would drip blood. How is this possible? Ningxu's beautiful brows tightly knit together, and she immediately raised her doubts. First, since the imperial astronomer obeyed imperial concubine Qi's orders to perform a divination, It must have recorded the names and corresponding birth dates of all the young misses to be chosen. It must be checked over and over again before it can be thrown into the divination pot. How could such an ominous piece of paper be mixed in with the rest? Second, His Highness's consort selection is a major event, so it's impossible for only one person to be present to perform the divination. At the very least, the supervisor, junior supervisor, magistrate, and more than 10 other people should be there to assist. The process of making the tokens, making a vow, inquiring about the heavens, throwing the tokens, and so on, has to be done in groups of 2 or 3. Each group is responsible for one step, not interfering with each other and supervising each other. Even if that ominous token was lucky enough to be mixed in, how could it be guaranteed that it would be chosen in the next step by chance? Third, perhaps the person who was a ghost specifically aimed at the last step of the token throwing, and took the opportunity to replace the one that was truly chosen. But how did he escape the eyes of the people next to him? Moreover, the probability of being found to be a fraud in the last step is too high. There are only 2 or 3 suspects, and after this matter is revealed, these people will bear the brunt of the interrogation. How could he be so sure that he wouldn't be found? Or is it that he doesn't want to live anymore? She understood at the same time. So when he said impossible, it wasn't that he looked down on her, but that he would never let her be chosen and fall into that treacherous and terrifying situation. Chapter 135. That's right. Such an almost impossible thing happened, but it did. It happened right under His Majesty's nose. How inconceivable. Xiaoqing slowly said. His Majesty ordered all 30 people in the Imperial Astronomer to be arrested and interrogated overnight. They didn't get any useful information, and didn't find any clues. Currently, he could only order for this matter to be sealed. No one is allowed to leak it to the outside world. And you are the only person I told. For such a small piece of paper, the Ministry of Justice's most experienced torture experts were sent out, but they didn't find any suspicious points. It was simply ridiculous. It seems that after arranging my marriage, that person has extended his hands to Your Highness. It's just that the fate of going mad and dying an unnatural death is a little too cruel. Ningxu couldn't help but sigh. She thought for a moment and said, then could it be that the piece of paper was swapped on the way from the Imperial Astronomer to Funing Palace? Logically speaking, after the Imperial Astronomer divined a heavenly secret, it shouldn't be spied on in advance. It should be immediately sealed and presented to the Emperor before being made public. Therefore, it was very possible that it was swapped on the way. After the piece of paper was divined, it was sealed in a brocade box and locked. It was escorted into the palace by 8 eunuchs. The lock was divided into 2 halves, with 2 stewards each holding 1 half. When it reached Funing Palace, the 2 of them opened it at the same time. Then, under everyone's eyes, it was placed on a tray and presented to His Majesty and Consort Ning. Being a ghost under the eyes of so many people is much harder than being an Imperial Astronomer. The only possibility is that these 8 people conspired together. But do you know who these 8 eunuchs are? Xiaoqing's finger lightly tapped on the brocade box, a mocking smile on his face. Consort Qi's trusted aides. Ningxu understood after thinking about it. She had long known that Qi Zhanyu had admired Xiaoqing for a long time, and as a blood relative, Consort Qi, in order to fulfill her most beloved niece, and in order to use this marriage to draw the South pacifying manner to her side, increasing the bargaining chip for her son Xiao Yansu to seize the throne, she would never allow this matter to go wrong. Therefore, even if the piece of paper was swapped, the original person could only be Qi Zhuanyu's piece of paper, and definitely not this one. However, such a mysterious thing had happened. It was so unpredictable and treacherous. After thinking it through, Ningxu was inwardly speechless. This matter has escaped the attention of so many pairs of eyes and 7 orifices people. It seems like it was done flawlessly. They must have put in a lot of effort. However, I still have some doubts about this matter. Is Your Highness the target of this matter? Or? She stretched out her slender fingers and slowly wrote a word on the small table in front of her. Qi? Although this matter revolves around Your Highness's marriage, Imperial concubine Qi is also inexplicably involved. Her purpose is clear as day. She wants to betroth her niece, Qi Juiyu, to your highness. So I'm thinking, could there be another possibility? Someone was dissatisfied with Imperial concubine Qi's domineering behavior, and didn't want this matter to be as simple as she wanted it to be, so she set up a trap to make things go contrary to her wishes? Xiahou Qing laughed. He had always been an indifferent person. Even if he laughed, it was mostly a mocking smile, a smile that wasn't a smile. It was enough to slightly raise the corner of his mouth. At this moment, he unexpectedly revealed such a clear smile. It was like the spring breeze blowing on a pool of spring water, causing people's minds to involuntarily sway. Yes, I also want to know which one it is, he said. Since the rain quietly stopped, the curtain of clouds gradually dispersed, and the treasured mirror became clear. The first ray of light poured out from the curtain of clouds, sprinkling down from the horizon, and penetrating through the window, scattering diagonally on the side of his face. Half of it was light, half of it was dark, and that line of light and darkness fell on his smiling lips at this moment. After a short pause, Ningxu moved her gaze away from that line of light and darkness, and continued. So your highness' idea is to immediately choose a concubine. Chapter 136. Yes, Xiahou Qing's tone was unusually light. This matter only happened last night. After I received His Majesty's summons, I had no choice but to rush to the palace in the rain. Naturally, I had to catch the other party off guard in the shortest amount of time. From last night until now, it has only been 10 hours. I want to see how the other party can set up 2 flawless puzzles in such a short amount of time. Other than that, I can also test who the other party's true target is. Ningxu was silent. Why did she feel that compared to the curse on his future Shitsi Fei, he cared more about rushing into the palace in the rain in the middle of the night? Of course, she didn't dare to say this in front of him. She could only offer a smiling face and flatter him. Your Highness is wise. This little girl admires you. She thought for a moment and then said, but since your Highness already has a plan in mind, why do you need this little girl to help you choose a consort and waste time? Can't your Highness solve this matter yourself? He lightly waved his hand and ordered Jiuxi to drive the carriage. Then he leaned against the brocade cushion to rest, using his hand to support his head. I'm tired. Compared to working myself, I prefer to see others share my burdens. What, you're not willing? I'm willing, very willing. It's good that you're willing. Xiahou Qing curved his lips and threw over the eunuch robe that he had prepared earlier. The one from last time was ruined in the secret passageway in the Sea of Fire. I ordered someone to make another one. I invited the best tailor and embroiderer in the capital. The price should be equal to half of the total cost of solving the last case. His meaning was very simple. Previously at the Chasing Cloud and Moon Chasing Tower, she had shamelessly proposed to split the cost of solving the case between them. He had gladly accepted, but the way he put it into practice made Ningxu's heart bleed like a river. Thus, Ningxu endured the pain in her heart, and wore the most expensive eunuch robe in the capital. She followed Xiahou Qing into Weiyang Palace in the imperial city to participate in the selection process for the Shitsi Fei. The sky had long since cleared up, and the jade-colored glazed tiles appeared even more magnificent and dazzling after being washed. Only the wet marks left on the vermilion walls of the palace, and the lotus pond that had silently risen by half an inch reminded them that this place had just endured a terrible storm last night. Many of the begonia flowers in the palace had been hit by the wind and rain. Their petals had fallen, and they quietly drifted away with the water. Clusters of Taiping flowers quietly sprouted their pistils, and the red snow in the courtyard was as gorgeous as the sunset. It was said that this flower was the previous emperor's favorite flower. During his 30-odd years on the throne, his favorite word was peace. Unfortunately, when he died, it was the most chaotic time in the history of the dynasty. Seeing this flower suddenly bloom today, he really didn't know if this was a good sign or a bad one. Of course, Ningxu only dared to think these words in her heart. She didn't dare to say it out loud. Because this was the imperial palace, the most magnificent and vast place in the world, but also the place where conspiracies flourished. Before he even stepped into the Weiyang Palace, he could already hear the commotion inside. Ningxu smiled and said, "It seems that your highness's charm is indeed extraordinary. Only half of the nobles in the city are left. The remaining ones who didn't come are probably those whose families haven't reached the right age. Although your highness can't see, it's better to go in and listen through the curtains. It's said that the voice is delicate and the body is soft. A pleasant voice can make one's whole body go limp and numb, even if one's appearance is average." Xiaoqing coldly sneered. "Ah, it seems that you're quite an expert. Don't forget why you're here today. I don't seem to have invited you to admire the beauty and chat." His black cloak was lifted by the wind, and he had already stepped into the side hall. Chapter 137. Consort Qi was supposed to be in charge of today's heir consort selection. But what happened last night was indeed too strange. His Majesty was not at ease and ordered the Empress to do the same. In the front hall, most of the noble young ladies from each manor had already arrived. Each of them sat on the banquet table with a heart like a rabbit, waiting for this so-called Taiping banquet, which was actually the beginning of the consort selection ceremony. Today, they all dressed up their most beautiful side. On one hand, they pretended to chat and joke with the young ladies next to them. On the other hand, they couldn't help but quietly look shyly and timidly at the huge screen that separated the front hall from the front hall. They only hoped that the handsome and outstanding heir Xiahou would leisurely walk out from behind the screen and softly call out his name. Ningxu didn't know how nervous and expectant these young ladies were. Ningxu saw with her own eyes how leisurely and comfortable His Highness was until the palace maid came over and said, "Everyone is here. His Highness, please choose by yourself." Xiaoqing put down the teacup in his hand and leisurely stood up. He ordered Ningxu to support him and walked to the front of the screen. The screen was very exquisite. It was a hollow style with a roll of spring snow-melting red plum blossoms pasted on it. Looking from the front hall to the back, one could only vaguely see a rough outline. But looking from the back to the front, one could clearly see the situation in the front hall through the layer of exquisite carvings in paper. Xiaoqing said, "Which noble young ladies came today? Read out their names to me." Across the screen, Ningxu looked at the 20 or so young ladies who were like blooming flower buds with rosy cheeks and read out their names one by one, until she saw Consort Qi and Consort Qi sitting on the east side. She paused and then said in a low voice, "Consort Qi is also here." Although His Majesty had ordered for the strange curse last night to be sealed, Consort Qi, who had witnessed it with her own eyes, must have a way to secretly pass the news to her closest niece, Consort Qi. If ordinary people knew about such a terrible curse, they would definitely hesitate. Unexpectedly, Qi Juanyi still came today. She was dressed in an embroidered robe and had the most exquisite makeup on her face. She arrogantly raised her chin and leaned against Consort Qi's side, disdaining to chat with any of the other noble young ladies present, as if she had already decided that the southern pacifying prince's heir consort was already in her bag. It was just that the light green hair under her eyes that was not completely covered showed that she had been hesitating and unable to sleep last night. Ningxu really didn't know whether to praise her for being so affectionate that she didn't care about life and death, or to sigh that she didn't know the difference between life and death, which was admirable. Just as Ningxu was reading out the names of all the young ladies present to Xiaoqing, Empress Chao smiled as she swept her gaze over the crowd. Then she said amiably, "Since we're all here, let's begin the banquet. This empress has specially ordered people to pick the Taiping flowers that have just bloomed today. Let's admire the flowers as we eat. There's no need to be reserved. Just treat it as a small gathering with the elders and Jinlan." Empress Chao lightly waved her hand, indicating for the palace servants to start the banquet. At the entrance of the hall, a beautiful figure dressed in light yellow imperial robes suddenly appeared in front of everyone's eyes, supporting someone as they stepped over the threshold. Everyone looked over and saw an unexpected person, the 13th Princess Xiao Zhangping. Everyone knew that the marriage of an imperial princess had always been decided by His Majesty, the Empress, or the Empress Dowager. There had never been a reason for them to be chosen together with the other noble young ladies. Wasn't she lowering her status by appearing here? Facing everyone's surprised, doubtful, or contemptuous gazes, Xiao Zhangping's eyes flashed with a trace of evasiveness. However, when old Princess Consort Yu gently patted her hand to comfort her, she found the courage she had been preparing for a long time. She straightened her back and brought out her pride as an imperial princess. Facing Empress Chao, she said, "Mother, please wait a moment. Mother, please wait a moment. I'm still missing." Putting down the wine cup in her hand, Empress Chao's eyes revealed disapproval. She frowned slightly and said, "Zhangping, don't cause trouble." Chapter 138. The current emperor had a total of 8 princes and 6 princesses. It was hard to say who His Majesty favored the most. However, if one were to ask who His Majesty did not favor, it would be 13th Princess Xiao Zhangping. There was no other reason than Xiao Zhangping's birth was an accident after His Majesty drank. Her birth mother was a lowly palace maid in the inner servants' bureau. His Majesty met her, by chance during a palace banquet after getting drunk. When he sobered up, he found that this palace maid was very ordinary and boring. His Majesty was very disappointed, and did not plan to take her as a concubine. However, this palace maid was very capable, and became pregnant with a dragon seed after one night. She then gave birth to 13th Princess Xiao Zhangping. However, this palace maid was unlucky and died of an epidemic a few years later. Until her death, she was only a 5th-ranked talent. Her birth mother was not favored, so the 13th princess grew up like air. It wasn't until 6 years ago, when old Prince Yu passed away due to illness, that Prince Yu's household had withered. Old Princess Consort Yu deeply felt that she was lonely, so she begged the emperor and the empress to choose the unattended 13th princess to accompany her. His Majesty, on account of his old relationship with the old prince, happily agreed. Since then, the unknown 13th princess Xiao Zhangping had a little support. Hearing the reprimand in Xiao Ho's words, Xiao Zhangping's face paled and she bit her lips. Previously, she had asked old Princess Consort Yu to put in a good word for her in front of Imperial Mother, but she had been softly rejected time and time again. It wasn't that she didn't know that Imperial Mother wasn't willing to stand up for her. She had also heard that Southern Yan had sent an envoy to ask for the princess's hand in marriage to tie the knot between the two countries. Thus, today was her last chance. She had to come, otherwise she was afraid that she would regret it for the rest of her life. Before Xiao Zhangping could think of a suitable response, Qi Zhaoyu, who was beside Consort Qi, stood up. "Your Highness," this humble girl boldly asks. 13th princess is a princess. How can she be chosen with us? This does not seem to be reasonable, right? He then turned to look at Xiao Zhangping and sneered. "Your Highness, it's fine if you don't care about your dignity, but if you drag His Majesty and Her Highness down with you, it will be a great sin." It would be fine if the Empress reprimanded her, but Qi Jiuyu dared to ridicule her in front of so many people. Xiao Zhangping was infuriated, but he also said, "Fourth young lady Qi, if that's the case, an inauspicious person like you shouldn't appear here. Aren't you afraid of offending Imperial Mother and His Highness the Crown Prince? I'm afraid you can't bear the consequences." Qi Jiuyu frowned. "How am I not clear?" Xiao Zhangping sneered. "The case of your fourth young lady being haunted by a demonic wolf has already spread to more than half of the capital. Your father has invited countless Taoist masters to exorcise the demonic spirit in the mansion, but they still haven't been completely exorcised. Don't tell me this isn't ominous? Her body is inauspicious, yet she still covets the position of heir consort. Does fourth young lady Qi wish to bring this misfortune into the Lord pacifying manner? What nonsense are you talking about? It's just that someone pranked me by leaving a few paw prints in my room to scare me. How could I be haunted by a demonic wolf? My birth date and horoscope were determined by the imperial astronomer. As for the so-called demonic wolf, I'm wondering if someone didn't want me to be chosen as the heir consort. So they deliberately tried to scare me and ruin my marriage with His Highness the Crown Prince. Your Highness, you said that this person's ability is so great that it's not something an ordinary person can do. Who do you think it is? What do you mean by your words? You've committed a taboo and provoked a demon to cause mischief. Instead of reflecting on yourself, You're thinking of framing others. What a good upbringing. She watched as an imperial daughter and consort Qi's niece, the two most distinguished girls in the room, were about to quarrel in front of so many people. Ning Shu watched from behind the screen with great interest. Neither of these two were easy to deal with. Moreover, both of them were determined to win the position of heir consort. No matter which one it was hard to endure the luck of love. She quietly glanced to the side and looked at Xiaohoqing, expressing her deep sympathy for His Highness the Crown Prince. As if he sensed Ning Shu's gloating gaze, Xiaohoqing coldly let out a heh from the bottom of his throat. With a light flick of his finger, a small bead flew out from between his fingers. Feeling her waist go numb, Ning Shu immediately couldn't laugh because her legs immediately went limp and weak. She dangerously grabbed onto something to prevent herself from falling. But before she could rejoice, she turned her head and found that the thing she was holding onto wasn't anything else but Xiaohoqing. Chapter 139. Her waist was sore and her legs were numb. She couldn't stand properly and hurriedly grabbed onto something. Only now did she realize that she was holding onto Xiaohoqing's shoulder with one hand, and his belt with the other. Her entire upper body was pressed tightly against his chest. There wasn't an inch of distance between them. Her slightly hot cheeks could almost count the steady heartbeat in his chest. After a short moment of shock, it was followed by awkwardness. An indescribable awkwardness mixed with a trace of inexplicable panic. She immediately pulled back her hand in a fluster and steadied herself by holding onto the heavy screen in front of her. Then she smiled apologetically at him and wanted to say, "I'm really sorry. My daughter was careless and offended Your Highness." She also wanted to say, "My daughter didn't do it on purpose. It was Your Highness' fault." She also wanted to tease, "Your Highness, I see that these two are infatuated with you. Their backgrounds aren't low and their appearances are as beautiful as flowers. You won't make a mistake in choosing either one." But in the end, she didn't say a word. She pressed her fingertips against the auspicious patterns carved on the screen. She turned her head and continued to watch the situation in the front hall. Beside her, Xiaohoqing was also silent. He silently listened to the sounds in front of him. After a long time, he raised his hand and brushed the shoulder that Ning Shu had just held onto. Then he pinched it, as if he was pinching a flower that had quietly landed on his shoulder. The front hall knew nothing about what happened behind the screen. Xiao Zhongping and Qi Juiyu were still bickering until Qiao Ho couldn't listen anymore and frowned. On the side, old Prince Yu coughed lightly and smiled at the Empress. "Nyang Nyang, look. These children are still children in the end. They're bickering with just a few words. They're really lively and cute. How about this, since you're all here today, if you leave now, it'll be criticized. Why don't you all stay? As for who Namping Wang's heir chooses, it'll depend on your luck. Consort Qi Nyang Nyang, what do you say?" Consort Qi's expression was already extremely unhappy. Previously, when she was in charge of the heir consort selection, no one dared to mention that Qi Zhenyu was haunted by the demon wolf. But now, she shared the same reasoning as the Empress. If she wanted to investigate further, Qi Zhenyu indeed did not meet the requirements to participate in the selection. So no matter how unhappy she was, she could only nod and smile coldly. "Then little 13th will stay and chat with me for a while. Just treat it as playing." Empress Chao said. "If that's the case, then so be it." Empress Chao did not have any children, so there was no legitimate princess who could marry into the Namping Wang estate. Her Chao family also did not have a young lady of the right age who met the requirements for the heir consort selection. Thus, Empress Chao did not intend to get involved in this matter. However, although the final flower did not fall into her family's hands, if that flower brushed past Imperial concubine Qi, she would be happy to see it happen. Between the 13th princess and Qi Juanyu, she preferred the former. Moreover, old Princess Consort Yu had made a special appearance today, so she was naturally willing to give her some face. Xiao Zhongping and Qi Juanyu sat opposite each other and coldly glanced at each other. The banquet officially began. Under the cover of the music, Ning Shu said in a low voice, "Now the 24 young ladies have all arrived. Today the Empress, Imperial concubine Qi, old concubine Yu, and old concubine Shen and old concubine Su are accompanying them. In the entire palace, other than them, there are 42 palace maids, 56 eunuchs, 12 performers, and guards standing guard outside the hall. Your Highness, you can begin the selection of the heir consort. There were 139 people in the entire palace. If someone wanted to play tricks, it would definitely be one of these people. However, how should the 24 young ladies be chosen to catch the ghost hiding behind them? Xiahou Qing looked at her and said calmly, "What do you think?" Ning Shu slightly frowned and went through the situation again in her mind. Finally, she said 2 words, "Draw lots." Hearing this, Xiahou Qing slightly raised the corner of his mouth into a faint smile. Then, he waved his hand and Huimo immediately took out a brocade box that had been prepared earlier. When he opened it, there was a thick stack of paper inside. The rest of the paper was blank except for a line of words written on one of the papers. 1,000 trees blooming in the east wind night. The brush and ink were elegant and natural like a dragon. Huimo didn't need to be told. He folded the paper into the same size and sealed it in another stack of prepared envelopes. Ning Shu saw this and raised her eyebrows. It seemed that great minds think alike. Chapter 140. There were a total of 24 ladies present, and each of them had a huge variable. Instead of randomly choosing one, it was better to use the strategy of drawing lots to completely muddy the pool of hidden mystery. If the other party had an accurate target, they would definitely take action during the drawing of lots. If not, then it would depend on the final result. Huimo quickly packed the 24 letters, sealed them with wax, put them back into the brocade box, and handed it to Ning Shu. "Go ahead," Xiahou Qing said. Ning Shu nodded, bent over and put the brocade box on top of her head, twisted her body and slowly walked out from behind the screen. Everyone at the banquet seemed to be enjoying the flowers, but in fact, many people's eyes quietly fell on the screen. When Ning Shu appeared, she immediately attracted everyone's attention. Chao Ho raised his head and glanced at the crowd. He said gracefully, "Have you made your decision, Heir Xiahou?" Ning Shu cupped her fists and bowed. She lowered her voice and said, reporting to the Empress, "My family Shi Ziyi said that all of you ladies are virtuous ladies from famous families, and each of you has your own outstanding points. As the saying goes, flowers in disorder gradually confuse people's eyes." He really didn't know how to make a choice to live up to everyone's misplaced love. Thus, he decided to leave this matter to the heavens. There are 24 letters in the brocade box in my hand. 23 of them are empty, and only one of them is written by His Highness. Later, I'll have to trouble the ladies to randomly pick one letter from them, and then it will be clear at a glance who is chosen. Hearing this, all the ladies present whispered. The so-called concubine selection was to choose the most beautiful, the most gentle and dignified, or the most talented among a group of ladies with good family backgrounds. Therefore, most of the ladies present hurriedly practiced their best skills before receiving the invitation to enter the palace this morning, and were ready to show it at the banquet to catch the attention of His Highness. No one expected that the final concubine selection was inexplicable drawing of lots, which really made people not know whether to laugh or cry. However, some people were secretly happy. No matter what kind of concubine selection method, there was a possibility that the concubine would be selected internally. On the contrary, drawing of lots was the most fair and reasonable. Everyone had a chance, and maybe the good luck would fall on them. Only Qi Juoyu frowned and pulled Qi Fei's sleeve, showing her displeasure. This method was beneficial to others, but it was extremely disadvantageous to her. The chance of 1 in 24 was too low. However, this method was proposed by Heir Xiahou himself, and no one could change it. On the other side, Xiao Zhongping also clutched his handkerchief, revealing a nervous expression. Old concubine Shen, who was sitting next to Empress Chao, laughed. The so-called marriage is predestined by the heavens. In the end, it depends on whose hand the red string is wrapped around. This method is quite interesting. Don't you think so, Your Highness? Empress Chao smiled and nodded. When the time comes, those who don't get it don't have to complain. It's all fate. Thus the drawing of lots began. Qi Juanyu was overbearing. She was the first to get up and walk to Ning Shu. But her hand grabbed a letter in front of the brocade box and put it down. Then she hesitated and grabbed another letter. She hesitated for a long time, but still couldn't decide which one to pick. Until Xiao Zhangping also came over. Qi Zhuanyu was unwilling to lose to her. Both of them bit their lips at the same time and took one of the letters. Then, more than 20 other ladies came to pick one letter one after another, and then returned to their seats one after another. Everything seemed to be going very smoothly, and there was no trace of a wave. Putting down the brocade box in her hand, Ning Shu silently stood aside, waiting for the last moment of the answer. Chapter 141. Some of the more impatient ones couldn't wait to open the letter as soon as they got it. Under the nervous gaze of the surrounding people, they slowly unfolded the folded letter, and then showed a disappointed look. There were also some who were self-restrained and dignified. They first put the letter aside, but after a while they couldn't help but open it again. Xiao Zhangping and Qi Zhuanyu looked at the opened letters nervously. Every time they saw a disappointed face, they secretly let out a sigh of relief and rejoiced in their hearts. Then they continued to look at the next one with trembling hearts until the remaining 22 empty letters were all displayed in front of everyone. At this time, everyone's eyes were focused on them because there were only 2 of them left. Then the final candidate for the heir's wife would definitely fall on one of them. Xiao Zhangping's heart almost jumped out of her throat. She forcefully pressed down on her wildly beating heart and softly pleaded to old Princess Consort Yu beside her. Imperial Consort Yu, please open it for Pinger. Old Consort Yu nodded and picked up the envelope. She took the letter from the maidservant and gently opened the cinnabar seal. Xiao Zhangping held her breath and opened the seal. In the next moment, the last tears in Xiao Zhangping's eyes rolled down. She bit her lips and threw herself into old Consort Yu's arms. Old Princess Consort Yu patted her back with heartache and let out a pitiful sigh. A crimson blush immediately rushed to Qi Zhuanyu's cheeks, making her reveal an uncontrollable joy. She immediately picked up the unopened letter and held it tightly to her chest. It's not Xiao Zhangping. So it's her. It must be her. She desperately restrained her trembling fingertips and ordered her personal mammy to help her open the seal. Suddenly, Xiao Zhangping walked over with tears in her eyes, holding the hem of her skirt and said, "I'll help you open it." Looking at her red eyes, Qi Zhuanyu raised her eyebrows and smiled. "Do you want to let yourself give up completely? I won't do as you wish. I'll open it for you personally, and let you know that God is on my side from the beginning to the end." "You." Xiao Zhangping gritted her teeth angrily and reached out to snatch it. Old Concubine Su and Old Concubine Su both frowned when they saw that it was getting more and more outrageous. They ordered the servants to stop it immediately and not make it too ugly. Old Princess Consort Yu leaned over and coughed. She hurriedly walked over to Xiao Zhangping and comforted him. "Child, since things have already come to this, why force it? In the end, it's because you're not fated to meet him." Xiao Zhangping trembled and finally let go, allowing old Princess Consort Yu to return the letter to the palace servant beside her, who then returned it to Qi Zhuanyu. Qi Zhuanyu sneered and opened the envelope in front of Qi Zhuanyu. A line of words floated in the air like a dragon in front of everyone's eyes. The hundreds of people in the hall, real or fake, all smiled and congratulated him. Imperial concubine Qi even pressed down hard on her shoulder to show her satisfaction. Only Ning Shu, who had been silently watching the development of the situation, frowned slightly with inexplicable suspicion in her eyes. Then, she quickly imprinted the positions of everyone in the hall into her mind. Behind the screen, Xia Hoqing's face flashed a trace of unpredictability. Then he slowly walked out of the screen under Qi Zhuanyu's expectant gaze. With the help of Huimo, he walked to Qi Zhuanyu. Until this moment, Qi Zhuanyu, who had always been domineering, looked at Xia Hoqing, who was as high as the clouds in the sky and snow on the branches. Her cheeks were red as she read the words on the letter in a trance and excitement. "Your Highness, thousands of flowers bloom on the night of the east wind." The lighting in the Weiyang Palace was excellent. Beams of bright sunlight shone into the palace through the hollowed-out auspicious decorations. Some of them fell on him, making him look like an immortal who had quietly descended to the mortal world. And in that light, he slightly raised the corner of his mouth, revealing a perfect smile, and replied, "Blowing down, stars fall like rain." Behind him, no one noticed that Ning Shu almost immediately walked back to the screen and raised her head. Chapter 142. How did you do it? After the concubine selection, the banquet was temporarily over. Empress Chao smiled and took the women to the imperial garden to enjoy the flowers. The noisy Weiyang palace was soon empty. Only dozens of maids and eunuchs stayed in the hall to clean up. Behind the screen, Xia Hoqing asked Ning Shu with an indifferent expression, "Mirror." Ning Shu raised her hand and pointed at the top of the screen. Huiyemo opened his eyes widely and found the corner of the bronze mirror behind the palace lantern. He jumped up and took the bronze mirror down. The angle of the mirror is so good. It happened to be blocked by the palace lantern. I looked carefully for a while before I found it. Huiyemo handed the bronze mirror to Ning Shu. Holding the bronze mirror in her hand, Ning Shu frowned tightly. In addition to Qi Zhuanyu, there are 5 people who have touched the letter. They are the personal mammy who helped her with the firewax, 13th princess who fought with her for the envelope, the 2 maids who were ordered by old Princess Su to stop it, and old Princess Yu who persuaded Xiao Zhangping. After the incident, I immediately observed the position of everyone in the front hall. I found that only the maid who stood in the southeast corner of the front hall and was ordered by old Princess Su to stop the farce could see through the angle of the bronze mirror that we were preparing the letter behind the screen. As she finished her words, her sleeve slipped, and another letter appeared in her hand. She slowly unfolded it. There was a poem that was exactly the same as the one in Qi Zhuanyu's hand, and the one in her hand was the real one. As for the 24 letters she put in the brocade box before, they were all empty. The so-called concubine selection was a trap set by her and Xia Hoqing in advance from the beginning to the end. The purpose was very simple, to lure the snake to take the bait. Unexpectedly, the other party really did it. Using the mirror hidden behind the palace lantern, they peeped at the poem on the letter. When the maids were serving the dishes, they spread the news and forged an identical letter. The target was Qi Zhuanyu, and the quarrel between Xiao Zhangping and Qi Zhuanyu provided the other party with an excellent opportunity to steal the sky and replace the sun. This matter must have something to do with that palace maid. So is it old Princess Su who planned this? Huema was confused. He was surprised and confused. But that person is famous for being aloof from worldly affairs. She has no grudges with our Lord Pingnan's mansion. I didn't hear that she was not on good terms with concubine Qi. Why did she try so hard to set up such a big trap? What good would it do her to kill Qi Zhuanyu? From the imperial astronomer to today's consort selection, over 100 people were involved. She was an old concubine who was nearing 70 years old, and only had a princess royal who was already married. Why would she raise such a big storm to deal with a teenage girl who had nothing to do with her, and had no enmity with her? This was simply inconceivable. The relationship in the palace is complicated. Although the palace maid is old Princess Su's maid, we can't directly conclude that it was old Princess Su who did it. In short, at present, the first clue of the case has been found smoothly. Next, we should follow this clue to check the details of the palace maid first. After Xia Hoqing finished, he didn't hear Ning Shu's voice for a long time. So he said, "What do you think of?" Ning Shu hesitated for a moment. She kept recalling what happened in the hall just now. After a while, she frowned and said, "I don't think of anything. I just have a lot of questions." Xia Hoqing raised his eyebrows slightly with a trace of interest. "Tell me." Chapter 143. Out of the corner of her eye, Ning Shu found a cup of tea not far away, and immediately dipped it in her cup. She couldn't find an empty table or green table suitable for writing, so she bent down and started writing on the green bricks on the ground. But as soon as she wrote the first word, she felt that her neck was tightened and she was picked up from the ground. "Hey!" Right above her, Xia Hoqing showed an expression of disgust and said, "What's wrong with you? Don't you want your fingers to write on the ground?" "I'm used to writing. Isn't this a habit? If I don't write something, I always feel that it's hard to sort out my thoughts, and I couldn't find a place for me to write. Moreover, this little girl's skin is coarse and thick, so writing a few words on this brick won't be a problem." She smiled embarrassedly, then quickly covered the back of her neck, snatching her thin and weak little neck back from his hands. She took 2 steps back and muttered in a low voice, "But Your Highness, you just reached out and grabbed it. Don't you know that men and women shouldn't touch each other?" "What did you say?" Xiahou Qing frowned. She couldn't help but recall the scene where she almost fell and clung onto him. Ning Shu's pretty face blushed slightly as she rubbed the tip of her nose and said with a smile, "Hee hee, it's nothing. My daughter didn't say anything." Xiahou Qing snorted and waved his hand to Huiyamo. Huiyamo immediately cleaned up the small table with vases and moved it to Ning Shu. Ning Shu calmed down and began to think. First, it's true that this matter is related to the palace maid, but the number of people involved is definitely beyond our imagination. First of all, someone should know in advance that today's peace banquet is held in Weiyang Palace. Then he could send someone to hide the bronze mirror behind the lantern on the screen. Then, the palace maid of old Princess Su spied on our action and passed the news out. Then, someone outside the palace who received the news immediately made a fake and sent it back to the palace as fast as possible. Finally, someone found an opportunity to replace it. In this series of actions, more than 5 people had already surfaced. What's more, the palace maids who decorated the palace were ordered by Empress Chao, and the palace maid was old Princess Su's maid. Besides, there was a master who could imitate Your Highness's handwriting. It was only a few hours from the curse incident last night to Your Highness's decision to hold a banquet to select concubines. But they could arrange such a long line in such a short time. These people must have been buried deep in the palace for many years. As she wrote, she drew out the entire process of the other party's crimes. Secondly, it's obvious that the other party's method of substitution is one of the 6 people who came into contact with the letter. But what I was curious about was, how was she so sure that the 13th princess would run over and fight with Qi Zhuanyu for the flower, and let her fish in troubled waters? If it wasn't for that dispute, what would their plan have been? Next to her, Huiyamo looked at the string of water stains she wrote on the small table. He frowned and interrupted. "It seems that the 13th princess is very suspicious, but I don't think it's her. She has always admired my young master. Today, she came to participate in the concubine selection at the risk of being severely punished. Moreover, when she opened her letter and found that there was no word, her sadness was absolutely real. It was impossible for her to give the opportunity of being the young master's concubine to Qi Zhuanyu. Old Princess Yu was on the side of the 13th princess, so she naturally wouldn't do this. Among the remaining 4 people, the 2 palace maids rushed to stop them because they were ordered by Old Princess. According to Lady Ning, there were too many variables. There were only 2 people left. Qi Zhuanyu and her personal mammy were in cahoots. Would it be possible that Qi Zhuanyu committed the crime herself? She has always been determined to be the young master's concubine, and this marriage is very helpful to Qi Zhuanyu. The Qi family is naturally happy to see it, so they arranged it together with old Princess Su? The more Huiyamo said, the more he felt that his idea was reasonable. He felt that he suddenly became clear-headed today. He was so smart that he was impressed. So he continued to say with bright eyes, "And that letter has been in Qi Zhuanyu's hands. After all, she has the biggest chance to secretly change it." "It's possible." Ning Shu smiled noncommittally and continued to write the next 3. Third, since the other party could see the letter through the bronze mirror, it's possible that they didn't see me hiding the real handwriting of His Highness the Crown Prince. I'm thinking, if she saw it, why did she still insist on doing it under the nose of His Highness? What was her intention? Was it a provocation? Or did it deliberately show that she had to kill Qi Zhuanyu? From the last point of suspicion, the possibility of Qi Zhuanyu's doing was not very big. Knowing the intention of Xiahou Qing, she still pretended to be the chosen one. Wasn't she deliberately provoking Xiahou Qing? Although Qi Zhuanyu was domineering, she should understand this. But there were 6 suspects in total. Now they were ruled out one by one, which made the situation more confusing. After writing the last word, Ning Shu recalled that when Qi Zhuanyu saw Xiahou Qing walking towards her step by step from behind the screen, Her blushing cheeks were full of shyness, trance and joy. She suddenly sighed. If she knew that the letter that fulfilled her dream today would become a dagger to kill her in the future, how would she feel? Chapter 144. After listening to her 3 doubts, Xia Hoqing fell into deep thought. He said, "It seems that the situation we will encounter in this case may be much more complicated than the previous case. Complicated is not terrible, but the shadow in the dark is the most terrifying. Since the other party has decided to come out from behind the scenes, then we should face the battle head-on. Complicated threads seem to confuse people, but once there are more threads, there will be a time when they converge." Ning Shu answered slowly. "The gray threads of the grass snake are taken." Her voice was soft and calm, without any hesitation. Xia Hoqing inadvertently remembered that half a month ago, when she was in a bottleneck in the cloud leaf case, she couldn't help but reveal her unhappiness in front of him. Now she has become more silent, like a piece of unpolished jade dug out of a jade mountain. After being polished, she unconsciously exuded gentleness and firmness from the inside out. That kind of brilliance made Xia Hoqing's throat involuntarily move slightly. He walked out from behind the screen and said slowly, "What are you going to do next?" Ning Shu saw that he slightly raised his arm towards her. She was stunned for a moment, and then hurriedly stepped forward to support him. She said, "Since the target has been locked on Qi Juanyu, then keep an eye on her for the time being. As for the palace made beside old Princess Su, I will leave it to your highness." Xia Hoqing responded in a low voice and raised his chin towards Hui Mo. Then they walked out of the Weiyang Palace together. It was April and the sunlight was getting warmer. But he, who was bathing in the warm sunlight, was still wearing the black brocade robe and a fox fur cloak that would make others sweat profusely. His jade-colored face seemed almost transparent under the beautiful light, as if it would melt at any moment like a piece of ice and then disappear without a trace. Ning Shu thought for a moment and whispered, "Your Highness, if you finally find the person who poisoned you, how will you deal with him?" Xia Hoqing stopped and made a few light coughs. Then he spat out 3 words from his pale lips without hesitation, "Kill him." "And if he threatens you with the antidote?" she said. Xia Hoqing raised the corner of his mouth. He seemed to be smiling, but there was no joy on his face. He slowly turned to Ning Shu and said coldly, "No one in this world can threaten me, not even my life." Ning Shu opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but she swallowed the nonsense that was about to come out of her mouth. This was because she knew that this god made of ice and snow had always been sharp and angular. While the 2 of them were talking, they suddenly heard a commotion coming from the direction of the imperial garden not far away. A large group of palace maids and eunuchs ran over, looking nervous. Ning Shu frowned. She immediately stopped a servant and asked, "What happened in the imperial garden?" The 13th princess and the 4th young lady of the Qi family had a dispute. Both of them fell into the water. The palace servant was sweating profusely. He didn't bother to wipe the sweat off his forehead. He hurriedly replied and ran away. When Ning Shu arrived with Xia Hoqing, she saw that the 2 of them had just been rescued by the palace servants from the supreme liquid pool. More than 10 palace servants nervously surrounded the 2 of them. Qi Zhouyu was soaked. The exquisite makeup she had put on for the banquet this morning was all ruined. She could only hold on to the cloak handed to her by her nanny and shivered. As soon as she saw Xia Hoqing, Qi Zhouyu's tears rolled down. She felt wronged and said, "Your Highness, the 13th princess framed me." "What nonsense are you talking about? It was clearly you." Xiao Zhangping was so angry that her eyes were red. She pointed at Xiao Zhangping and said. Before she could finish, she heard the 2nd young lady of Grand Tutor Qian's family suddenly exclaim, "Qi, 4th young lady, there seems to be something behind you." "What?" Everyone immediately looked over curiously. Qi Fei's brows were tightly knitted as she walked closer. She pulled out a stick of paper from Qi Duiyu's collar. The words on it were written in blood red. It was so insolent that it pierced the eyes of everyone present. "Deranged madman. Died an unnatural death." Chapter 145. Xia Hoqing couldn't see, but from everyone's shocked gasps he could guess the gist of it. He whispered, "Is it those 8 words?" Ningshu nodded silently and answered, "Yes." Chi Zhouyu's face turned pale, and she almost collapsed. Miss, her personal nanny, Mama Hui, knelt on the ground and hurriedly supported her tightly. She anxiously said, "Your Highness Consort Chi, Your Highness the Empress, Your Highness the Heir Apparent, someone wants to harm my young miss." Most of the people present didn't know the inside story of last night, and didn't know about this unfathomable stick. They only felt confused and suddenly terrified. They covered their mouths, afraid that they would be involved in such a terrible matter. Imperial concubine Chi gripped the bamboo stick so tightly that she almost broke it. She suddenly raised her head and suppressed her anger. "When I first entered the Imperial Garden with Jiuyu, I didn't find this bamboo stick. It hasn't even been an hour, and this has happened. Someone must have deliberately approached Zhouyu during this period, and waited for an opportunity to secretly put this inauspicious stick on her. Mother Hui, you have always been by Zhouyu's side. Tell me, who deliberately approached her and did this?" Mother Hui said, "Reporting to Consort Chi, this old servant has always been by my Mrs. side. I have never seen anyone approach my Mississippi. Even when she was chatting with Miss Qian, she was always a foot away from my Mississippi. Only." Mother Hui stopped mid-sentence and looked at Xiao Zhangping. Then, with a bang, she bent down and kowtowed to Consort Chi, saying, "Only 13th Princess walked over for some reason just now. Without saying anything, she pushed my young miss into the supreme liquid pool. The surrounding misses all saw it. Consort Chi, please investigate." Xiao Zhangping was also soaked. He was stunned when he heard this. "What nonsense are you talking about? I saw a poisonous bee near your miss and wanted to go over and warn her out of kindness. She was clearly the one who inexplicably pulled me into the water." Poisonous bee. Consort Chi's eyebrows twitched, and some inexplicable emotion flowed through her eyes. She said coldly, "Where is the poisonous bee you mentioned? Did anyone see it?" "Really? You saw it just now, right? Am I right?" Xiao Zhangping said anxiously. However, she looked around for help. After searching for an entire circle, she could not find a single person willing to testify for her. There were only countless doubts, sighs, and disdain. A string of water droplets fell from her wet hair on her forehead. It was clearly the middle of April, but she was shivering all over, as if she was in the middle of winter. Thousands of miles of mountains, snow and ice covered the sky. Looking around, she was the only one. Chi Fei waved her wide sleeves and said, "Now that the situation is more or less clear, what else do you have to say?" "I know you're jealous because you didn't get chosen as the heir consort. But you should never have done such a thing. Do you think you can replace Zhan Yu just because you killed him? You're only shaming the face of the royal family. This consort will report this to His Majesty, and request that His Majesty mete out a heavy punishment." Xiao Zhangping's entire body trembled. The bone-piercing coldness froze her from the inside out, causing her to be unable to utter a single word. Consort Chi, old Princess Consort Yu, who had been silent all this time, staggered forward to support the tottering Xiao Zhangping. In terms of age, old Princess Consort Yu was only a few years older than Empress Chao, but she looked even older than the 2 dowager consorts. She covered her sleeves and coughed, then solemnly bowed to the Empress, Consort Chi, and the dowager consorts. Although the 13th princess has only been with this old one for a few years, this old one believes that this child is definitely not a vicious person. Moreover, she comes from His Majesty's flesh and blood. His Majesty is kind and benevolent. Even if she doesn't inherit everything, she should have at least 40 to 50%. In this imperial garden, there were hundreds of flowers competing with one another. It was possible for the 13th princess to mistake a bee for a poisonous bee. As for both of them falling into the water, there were many pebbles beside the pond. It wasn't uncommon to accidentally step on one and slip in. There was no need for Consort Chi to make such a big fuss over a misunderstanding. In the end, if the 13th princess really did it, she should have sent a palace servant to secretly stuff it onto the Chi 4th young Mississippi. This time, not only did she personally do it, but she even pushed the Chi 4th young miss into the water. Wouldn't that arouse suspicion? I ask that all of you consorts be clear and investigate thoroughly. Otherwise, you'll ruin the 13th princess's reputation for no reason, and let the person who truly harbors evil intentions get away scot-free. In the end, it'll harm the chief 4th young Mississippi. That would truly be a bad thing. Chapter 146. Old Princess, you spoke out to protect Xiao Zhangping. Empress Chao discussed with the 2 old concubines and decided to give her face. They temporarily ordered the palace servants to send Xiao Zhangping back to his own palace. It was said that Xiao Zhangping was frightened when he fell into the water. In fact, it was like putting him under house arrest. Qi Zhongyu was immediately sent to the fragrant hall, which was closest to the Tai pond. She was asked to change clothes to get rid of the cold. In one day, 2 farces happened in a row. One was bigger than the other. It was really tiring and frightening. The banquet was over. The young ladies of the various manors quickly returned to their manors and left the palace with a stomach full of fear and doubts. With their departure, the curse of the 8 characters could no longer be concealed. It was believed that before sunset tonight, everyone in the capital would know about it. Empress Chao accompanied the 2 tired old concubines back to the palace to rest. Hundreds of palace servants obeyed the empress' order. They bent down and buried themselves in the fragrant imperial garden to search inch by inch to see if they could find any clues. The black satin in front of Xiahou Qing fluttered in the wind. After hearing what had just happened, he gently twisted his fingers in his palm and calmly said, "How do you feel?" Ning Shu's eyes moved along with the palace servant's search. She instantly said, "Too arrogant." The other side clearly knew that the emperor ordered them to deliberately conceal the curse last night. Today they revealed it in public. It was so deliberate. It was as if they were saying, "The more you are afraid of people knowing, the more I want the world to know." Qi Zhongyu, the future Shitzi Fei of Lord Pingnan's mansion, was bound to die. No one could stop it. TSK, this kind of arrogance is really detestable. And it was a little rushed. She paused for a moment and said, "Last night, when the imperial astronomer first presented this piece of paper, 2 hours ago, when the imperial concubine was chosen, and not long ago, when Qi Zhongyu fell into the water, another piece of paper was placed in his collar. These several difficult tasks were all completed in less than 16 hours. If there is a little bit of evidence left, the whole game will be lost." He arranged it so impatiently. Is it because he is overconfident and fearless, or is there something that forced him to end this matter in the shortest time possible? What is this? Just as they were whispering to each other, a palace servant suddenly discovered a round object at the roots of the flower bushes beside the imperial liquid pool. He used all his strength to pull it out from the dense branches and leaves of the flower roots. The people around him immediately gathered around to take a look and exclaimed, "Eastern pearl! This is an Eastern pearl. With such a huge and round color, it must be worth a lot. How did it end up here? Ah, isn't this the place where 4th young Miss Qi and the 13th princess fell into the water? The Eastern pearl is here. Could it be that someone deliberately threw it here to harm the 2 of you? But even if someone deliberately threw it here, wouldn't it be fine to throw a glass bead or a pebble? Why did you throw such an expensive Eastern pearl?" The palace servants began to discuss among themselves. Hearing the words Eastern pearl, Xiahou Qing immediately said, "Give me that pearl." What did he want the bead for? Ning Shu looked at him in confusion, but it was not his place to explain to her what His Highness Crown Prince did. She hurriedly lowered her head and went forward to borrow the bead from the palace servants. The round Eastern pearl fell into Xiahou Qing's palm. The pearl was lustrous, while His Highness's palm was white. For a moment, it was hard to tell whether the Eastern pearl was lustrous or His Highness's palm was more beautiful. Ning Shu was secretly drooling in her heart when she heard Xiahou Qing frown and ask in a low voice, "What color is it?" Ning Shu leaned closer and carefully looked at it. It's milky white microns. Under the sun, you can see a colorful luster. As soon as she finished speaking, Xiahou Qing said, "It's mine." Ah! Before Ning Shu could react, she heard Xiahou Qing snort and clench his fist. "A few days ago, at the Phoenix Terrace Golden Buddha ceremony, you exposed Xiao Yunyan's true colors in front of everyone, and forced him to take you down with him. At that time I didn't have anything useful, so I took this Eastern pearl from the jade pendant and hit his wrist and knee. After that, Jussi found one for me, but the other one was nowhere to be found. At that time, I thought it was picked up by the crowd, so I let it go and didn't pursue it. I didn't expect it to see the light of day today. Moreover, it was in such a situation. Hearing this, even Ning Shu couldn't help but be slightly stunned. At that time, the Phoenix Terrace case had not been solved yet, and they were in a tense period. All their energy was invested in that case. However, the other party had already stealthily extended his hand to the next case that had yet to come. Such a layout, such a plan, such a scheme. It was simply amazing, but also terrifying. Previously, they were still discussing whether the curse was targeted at Xiaoqing or Qi Fei and Qi Zhouyu. Now it was completely clear. It was never one of them, but two birds with one stone. Chapter 147. Suppressing the shock in her heart, Ning Shu calmed down and followed the clues to carefully analyze the situation. Both incidents were caused by the 13th princess. She is too suspicious and people can't help but suspect her. Ning Shu said. Although logically speaking, it is impossible for the 13th princess to commit the crime. But I have a feeling that this case has something to do with her. Xiaoqing made a sound of agreement, and took out a jade tablet with the words, Ping Nan Wang Fu, engraved on it from his sleeve, and threw it to Ning Shu. Take my tablet and you can go to the 13th princess palace to report and ask. Ning Shu took the tablet, and did not move. What is it? Xiaoqing asked. Ning Shu's watery eyes blinked and silently looked at the Eastern pearl in his palm. Your Highness, don't you think the Eastern pearl in your hand looks like something? What? Ning Shu said several things in one breath. Steamed meatballs, ice and snow cold seeds, lychee meatballs, white jade fish balls, etc. Xiaoqing's thick and lightly painted eyebrows raised slightly. He remembered that behind the screen in Weiyang Palace, before the consort selection began, she had already secretly eaten several plates of snacks and food. She should not be hungry. Luo Yu suddenly understood. He sneered. After the case is solved, you can eat the entire Chasing Cloud and Chasing Moon restaurant. Your Highness is indeed generous. Ning Shu's eyes curved. See, it is so easy to talk to smart people. Although the imperial cuisine in the palace is good, in comparison, the Chasing Cloud and Chasing Moon restaurant is more delicious. In Wenfang Hall, Aunt Qi Dianyu was clearly wearing clean clothes, and every wet strand of hair had been dried by the nannies and palace maids. However, Qi Dianyu still hugged herself tightly. Her 10 fingers were so tight that her fingertips turned white. She clenched her trembling teeth and said with a face full of fear, I'm so scared. She remembered that she had fallen into the water just now, as well as the talisman she had found on her body after falling into the water. A great panic filled her entire heart. Before entering the palace, she had already learned of the Shitsi Fei's curse from the eunuchs that Qi Fei had sent. But hearing and seeing with her own eyes were two completely different matters. Even now, when she thought about the 8 words written on the bamboo stick with red cinnabar, she still had the urge to scream. Terrifying. It was too terrifying. That thing had mysteriously appeared in her collar, like the tongue of a viper, like the bullseye of a bow and arrow, firmly attached to her body, as if to say, death is already decided. It is only a matter of time. Just you wait. Tears rolled out of her eyes. Qi Dianyu grabbed Qi Fei's sleeve tightly and shook her head desperately, pleading, Aunt, do you think the wolf cub that I killed when I was young came back to take revenge on me? That's why he's been haunting me. Auntie, you have to save me. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. She had watched this child grow up. Unable to bear it, Qi Fei held her hand and said, don't be afraid. What wolf or not, it's just a beast. With Auntie here, even if it's a celestial being or a ghost, they can't hurt you, let alone a beast. This talisman must be someone who was jealous of you being chosen as the Shitsi Fei, so he secretly made a ghost to scare you. You must not let your imagination run wild and hurt yourself instead. Really? Qi Dianyu's eyes were filled with tears. Her flower-like face looked like it had just experienced a storm, appearing weak and pitiful. Qi Fei's gorgeous face was full of ambition. Of course it's true. My Qi family's daughter is the most precious girl in the Great Yu state. Even the princesses in the palace can't compare to you. This time, since you were chosen as the Shitsi Fei, it shows that Laoi is also on our side. What wolf demon haunting you, the talisman cursing you, Auntie will personally pull out the ghost. Don't forget, you are already the future Shitsi Fei that Xiahou Shitsi has chosen. How can he sit by and watch? Don't worry, my good you, or your good days are still ahead. And your cousin and I, the unspeakable glory and splendor are also at our feet. Hearing Xiahou Qing's name in a daze, Qi Dianyu struggled painfully as if she was drowning, hugging a life-saving piece of driftwood. Her whole body suddenly surged with a fervent courage. She nodded vigorously and muttered to herself, "Yes, with His Highness Shitsi here, he will definitely protect me and not let me suffer the slightest harm. I haven't married into the Southern Pacifying Prince's residence, so I can't let evil people succeed. The position of Southern Pacifying Prince's Shitsi Fei can only belong to me. No one can take it away." Chapter 148. Xiao Zhongping's palace was where her mother, Wen Kairan, lived before her death. It was located in the most remote southwest corner of the palace. Ning Shu walked from the supreme liquid pool to the palace. It took her half an hour to walk. It was enough to see how unfavored Wen Kairan, who had soared from a palace made to an imperial concubine, was. It was almost like she was in the cold palace. Several guards stood outside the palace, not allowing anyone to enter. Xiao Zhongping was also not allowed to step out. It was not until Ning Shu took out the token of the Southern Pacifying Wang Fu that the guards checked again, and again that she was slowly allowed to enter. Xiao Zhongping was sitting in the empty palace in a daze. Seeing Ning Shu come, she was stunned for a moment. Then she stood up and said, "I remember you. You are the little eunuch by Xiahou Shitsi's side. Did Xiahou Shitsi send you to find me?" Ning Shu bowed according to the etiquette of eunuchs. "That is correct. This servant greets your highness the princess." Xiao Zhongping's palms were red from clenching her fists. She took a deep breath and said, "Xiahou Shitsi, does he believe me?" Just these few words made Xiao Zhongping's eyes turn red. However, she held it in, unwilling to let her weakness show. Before Ning Shu could respond, she hurriedly defended herself. "Qi Juanyu really wasn't pushed down by me. That inexplicable bamboo stick was not stuffed into her clothes by me. Although I was jealous that she was chosen, I was just unhappy in my heart. I would never harm her." Ning Shu looked at her forcefully suppressed lips that had long lost their color. Suddenly, she could not bear it. Many people said that the 13th princess Xiao Zhongping was very similar to the 4th daughter of the Qi family. They were both overbearing, arrogant, and insufferably arrogant. However, very few people knew that Qi Juanyu's arrogance was the arrogance of being pampered in the palm of the Qi family. Furthermore, she had the support of imperial concubine Qi for many years. On the other hand, Xiao Zhongping's pride was nothing more than a self-defense mechanism after being wronged. Inside, he was just a pile of snow that would collapse at the slightest touch. "Your Highness, if my master doesn't believe you, he doesn't need to send this servant to your Highness." Ning Shu comforted her gently. "That's why this servant has a few questions to bother your Highness. Your Highness, please tell me the truth. Only in this way can your Highness' injustice be washed away. The truth will come to light, and you will not be wronged for no reason." Hearing Ning Shu's words, Xiao Zhongping's perturbed heart slowly calmed down by half. She forcefully blinked her eyes, blinking away the sourness in her eyes. She waved her wide sleeves, ordering all the palace servants in the hall to withdraw. She said, "Ask. If I, Xiao Zhongping, lie in a single word, I will die an unnatural death first." "Many thanks for your Highness' trust," Ning Shu said. "The first question, Your Highness, previously at the peace banquet in Weiyang Palace. Why did you make a move to snatch the 4th Miss Qi's flower letter?" The first question made Xiao Zhongping reveal an unbearable expression. She bit her lip and turned her head away. "At that time, I knew that I wasn't chosen. In my heart, I was very unhappy. I didn't want to accept my fate, but I had to accept it. In this life, your Highness and I are destined to be together. There is no possibility of dreaming. That's why I wanted to personally open Qi Zhuanyu's flower letter and witness the final destiny with my own eyes. I also wanted to completely give up. Was there someone who hinted to you? Or was it completely from your heart? Xiao Zhangping shook her head. No one hinted to me. At that time, I was feeling sad and lost control for a moment. I really couldn't hold it in and lost myself like that. At that time, when you were fighting for the flower letter, did your highness notice that someone went up to do something? Xiao Zhangping carefully recalled and said, I don't think so. At that time, I snatched the flower letter from Qi Zhuanyu's hands, and it was always in my hands. Then, Her Highness, you came to persuade me and I let go. Then, Her Highness, you personally handed the flower letter to the palace servant who came to persuade her. In the end, it was returned to Qi Zhuanyu's hands. I watched the entire time and didn't find anything strange. What, is there a problem with that flower letter? Ningxu didn't comment. She bowed her head and smiled. This servant was just asking casually. Your Highness doesn't need to take it to heart. Oh right, this servant heard Your Highness say at the side of the supreme liquid pool that you suddenly approached forth young Miss Qi, because you saw a poisonous bee surrounding her? Thinking of that matter, Xiao Zhangping's long eyelashes drooped. For some reason, deep emotions flowed through her eyes. Yes, Ningxu said again. The imperial garden is full of bees and butterflies. There are several types of bees, and their numbers are innumerable. How can Your Highness be sure that it was a poisonous bee? This sentence was like a needle that suddenly pierced Xiao Zhangping's heart and fingertips, causing her to tremble. Of course I know. No one in this world knows more than I do. In the empty and lonely center of the palace, Xiao Zhangping clenched her fists and almost shouted. Her heart rose and fell violently, as if she had fallen into a terrible nightmare and couldn't breathe. After a long while, she couldn't hold back her tears anymore. 2 lines of tears silently fell from her eyes. She said word by word, because my mother died, under that poisonous bee. Chapter 149. Died from poisonous bees? Ningxu furrowed her brows and said, This servant remembers that His Highness Mufei, when Chiron, was infected with an epidemic 6 years ago. No. Xiao Zhangping almost broke her fingernails. She tried her best to widen her eyes with a broken light. In the past, her Mufei had grabbed her hand tightly and begged her not to say anything because she wanted her to live. She wanted her to live like her name, to live peacefully in the palace. But even if she lived like a humiliated dog in the palace, not daring to speak the truth to anyone and allowing her mother to die in vain for many years, she still encountered everything that happened today. The matter of the curse was exposed. If the culprit could not be found in the end, then according to Qi Fei's domineering nature, she would definitely plant this disaster on her and make it difficult for her to live. So did she have a choice? No. After a long period of silence and soundless wails, Xiao Zhangping stood stiffly like a puppet. He stood in the empty palace that seemed to be emitting a moldy smell from every corner, silently competing with fate. Ningxu had experienced this kind of heart-wrenching struggle before. She didn't say anything. She only took out a handkerchief from her sleeve and handed it to Xiao Zhangping, holding a tear for her. A water droplet splashed onto the handkerchief, creating a watermark. Xiao Zhangping took a deep breath and slowly opened her mouth. Guess from the time I was born until I was 9 years old, how many times did I see Father Emperor? She raised the corner of her mouth and smiled as tears fell. She answered her own question. It can be counted on one hand. Even if I did see him, it was only during festivals and celebrations, mixed in with other brothers and sisters to pay my respects from afar. However, I didn't feel too sad because I had my mother by my side. There were countless beautiful imperial concubines living in this palace. Each one of them had a face that was many times more beautiful than my Mufei, but none of them had a pair of gentle eyes like my Mufei. However, Father Emperor only saw those pleasing faces and never noticed the warmth in my Mufei's eyes and the softness in her heart. Therefore, from childhood to adulthood, the impression we had was that we wore clothes that couldn't protect us from the cold in the winter and felt hot in the summer. We ate simple meals that even some eunuchs and maidservants couldn't compare to. Because in this palace, Imperial concubine mother and I are invisible. No one can see us. But fortunately, his mother was very capable. She always thought of ways to take me to have snowball fights in the winter, to make swings in the spring, to set up awnings in the summer, and to weave grasshopper cages in the autumn. She made all kinds of interesting toys to play with me. Occasionally, she would secretly conjure up a candied fruit to make me excited for an entire day. I should be the most unpresentable princess in this palace. But even so, I was still happy. I was even willing to rely on my mother for the rest of my life, and live such a simple and happy life. Until he was 9 years old. I suddenly realized that my mother, who had always been smiling gently, had suddenly fallen ill for some unknown reason. In just a few days, her face had turned sallow and pale. Worried, I asked her, "What's wrong? Do you want to see the imperial physician?" Imperial concubine mother repeatedly forced a smile, and coaxed me that it was nothing. Until one night, she suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. I panicked and cried to find the imperial physician, but imperial concubine mother stopped me and didn't allow me to go. She held my hand tightly and held me in her arms. She cried and said, "My Pinger is still so young. How will he live in this palace in the future? Heavens, I am willing to be a pig, a dog, a cow, a horse in the next life, in exchange for my Ping, or to grow up safely." I was also young at that time and didn't know what to do. I could only cry. Mother gently licked my tears and took out a handkerchief from her bosom. In her hand was the corpse of a dead bee. She said, "Pinger, remember, you have to take good care of yourself. You must be wary of bees that look like this. They will take your life." And Xiao Zhongping's eyes trembled as if a dam had burst. He couldn't breathe. The memories that had been deliberately sealed were released today. Every drop of water was like the kiss of his mother when he licked away his tears, carrying the taste of blood. Before she died, she clutched her chest tightly, as if there was a broken bellows there. Every breath she took was intermittent. She opened her eyes wide and looked at me pleadingly, saying, "Mother's good Ping. My Pinger, you must remember. Don't mention my cause of death to anyone. Just treat it as if I died from an epidemic." Epidemic. Xiao Zhongping's pale face was full of ridicule. But I didn't give up. I ran out barefoot and knocked on the door of the Imperial Physician Hospital. When the Imperial physicians arrived late, my Imperial concubine mother had already taken her last breath. They diagnosed her for a long time before making a decision. Sure enough, it was as my Imperial concubine mother said. Chapter 150. The sunlight outside was still good. The bright light shone through the old window lattice and fell on the ground. Yin and yang, light and dark, cold and warm. It was incomparably distinct. And Xiao Zhongping was standing in the darkness. Her throat was choked with sobs, and only her tears could be seen. In the end, this seemingly domineering and arrogant 13th princess was just a young girl who had lost her mother. Since she was 9 years old, she had no choice but to disguise herself and struggle to survive in this cold palace. Every step she took was trembling, as if she was walking on thin ice. Ningxu unconsciously felt a faint sense of pity in her heart. She once again raised the handkerchief in her hand in front of her and softly said, "May I ask your highness, is the poisonous bee that died that year still preserved?" "Of course there is. That is the thing that killed my mother." Xiao Zhongping frowned and resisted. "You want to ask me for it? But why should I believe you?" Ningxu said, neither too fast nor too slow. "Because this servant is under the orders of the crown prince to clear the princess's name. Of course, your highness can choose not to believe me, and I will do my best to solve this case. But without this important piece of evidence, it may delay the progress of solving the case. How to decide? It is all up to your highness." Xiao Zhongping lowered her head and hesitated for a long time. Ningxu did not rush her, and only stood quietly with her until she finally made a difficult decision. Biting her lips, she took the handkerchief from Ningxu and said, "Okay, I believe your highness, so I am willing to give this to you. I hope you will not fail to live up to my trust. Remember, if you lie to me, I will put my mother's life and mine on your head." She wiped her tears with a handkerchief, lifted her skirt, and walked out of the palace. She walked to a long rotten swing in the courtyard, bent down, and dug with her slender fingers. 6 years of dust had long since covered that thing in layers. Every time she dug, her fingers hurt until another pair of hands joined in, doing the same with her. Xiao Zhangping was stunned. He couldn't help but raise his head to look at Ning Shu. A moment later, he lowered his head and continued to dig. About a quarter of an hour later, Ning Shu opened the wooden box full of mud and took out the handkerchief that was wrapped in the poisonous bee's corpse. She carefully put it away and put it in her sleeve. Then she bowed and left. Xiao Zhangping's lips moved. Only when Ning Shu was about to leave the palace did he say, "Little eunuch, I forgot to ask your name." Ning Shu smiled and said, "Your Highness is too courteous. This servant will return." "Yingui, all right, I'll remember it." Xiao Zhangping slowly recited it. After a while he couldn't help but say, "The way you looked at me just now, it was especially similar to my mother's." It was also a little like him. Him? Xiao Zhangping's face revealed a trace of embarrassment. Her tearful face didn't seem so pale because of this embarrassment. She lowered her head and spat out a few precious words from between her teeth. "Your Highness the Crown Prince." Because of this layer of slowly floating blush, the face that was not outstanding like her mother's was now incomparably moving. Ning Shu thought. She had really hung all her heart on Xiahou Qing. Then Ning Shu's heart turned slightly. He was stunned and couldn't help but laugh. Xiao Zhangping's mother was an extremely gentle person. She said that Xiahou Qing's eyes were similar to her mother's. So, the reason why Xiao Zhangping admired Xiahou Qing was because of an Oedipus complex? Then he heard Xiao Zhangping say, "There is one more thing. I want to take the liberty to ask eunuch Yan Gui." Ning Shu said, "Your Highness, please ask." Previously, I happened to hear the other brothers mention that His Highness the Crown Prince has an extremely... Xiao Zhangping deliberated for a long time before choosing a vague word. He hesitated and said, "A trusted little eunuch who is quite handsome and beautiful. I guess it should be you, eunuch Yan Gui. So please tell me the truth. Are you and your Highness really as the rumors say? Are you and your Highness very close? Do you eat and sleep together?" After a short moment of astonishment, Ning Shu opened her mouth in a daze. She was about to explain when she heard Xiao Zhangping hurriedly wave her hand. She laughed awkwardly and said, "Eunuch Yan Gui, don't think too much. I don't have any other meaning. Compared to Qi Juanyu, I would rather that person be you." "Ha ha ha, very good, very good." "Your Highness, this." A flock of invisible crows flew past her eyes. Ning Shu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she listened to her imagination fill in the entire unspeakable drama from beginning to end. She was speechless and could only hold her forehead. Chapter 151. When Ning Shu stepped out of the high threshold of the palace, the sun had already set. The sun shone on her face through the palace wall, as if sprinkling a layer of gold on her snow-white face. Guillermo was waiting for her not far away. When he saw her, he immediately waved his hand as if he was afraid that she couldn't see him. When Ning Shu approached, he immediately leaned over and whispered, "Just now I checked it under the order of His Highness. The servant girl of old Princess Su who works as a ghost is called Xinxing. She entered the palace 16 years ago. Her family once committed a crime. Later, she was sent to the laundry bureau as a servant girl. She worked for many years until she won the favor of old Princess Su by chance, and was appointed to work in the palace to get rid of the miserable labor. She was calm and never talked much. She just worked hard. In recent years, old Princess Su became more and more fond of her. Since 2 years ago, old Princess Su asked her to be her personal servant. She took her with her wherever she went. Xinxing seems to be ordinary and nothing special. Lady Ning, do you know what's so special about her?" Guillermo said excitedly. He deliberately kept Ning Shu guessing. His fluttering eyebrows seemed to be asking, "Do you want to know? Do you want to know? Ask me quickly." Ning Shu laughed and had to cooperate with him. "What's so special about her?" "I searched through all her files and questioned all the maids who had worked with her one by one until I was dizzy. Then I found out that she used to be a close friend of Princess 13's mother, the late Wen Kairan." Guillermo's eyes were shining. The more he talked, the more excited he was. They were sent to the laundry bureau only a few months apart. Shunxing's family was convicted because of a crime. She was bullied in the laundry bureau. When Chiron couldn't stand it, so she came out to protect her and saved her life. The two of them even slept on the same bed until when Chiron was transferred to the Internal Servants Bureau before they separated. Not long after, Shunxing also won the favor of old Princess Su and left the laundry bureau. Don't you think it's a coincidence? I feel that there is a big mystery in this matter. Huimo didn't know what the secret connection was. However, from Huajian to the falling into the water curse, both of these things were related to the 13th princess, and the only confirmed accomplice was an old friend of the 13th princess's mother. This whole circle was linked together, and any random thought would make one's imagination run wild. Huimo was extremely excited, but at the side, Ningxu revealed a look of bewilderment. How could it be so coincidental? The 13th princess was already under suspicion. More than 2 hours ago, Imperial concubine Qi had almost treated her at the Imperial liquid pool. Shunxing, this chess piece had appeared. It was simply handing Imperial concubine Qi a knife. She lowered her voice and said, "Other than your Shitzi, does anyone else know about this?" "Of course not. I was secretly ordered by His Highness to investigate. Without His Highness's order, even if a knife was held to my neck, I would not tell anyone." Ningxu frowned slightly. "That's good. Let's put this matter aside for now and wait for the right time." She remembered that not long ago, she took Xiao Zhangping's tear through the handkerchief in her palm. She was not sure what kind of soul was hidden under Xiao Zhangping's sincere and sad face. She could only be sure that if the relationship between Shunxing and when Chiron was revealed to Imperial concubine Qi, the 13th princess would be finished in an instant. It was impossible to save her. She said again, "Where is Shunxing's servant now?" Huimo's face was full of vigor, but in an instant, it was as if he had eaten a big bitter gourd. After a long while he reluctantly said, "His Highness means that we should not act rashly and alert the enemy for the time being. He has privately visited old Princess Su and got her permission. He ordered me to dress up as a palace maid to serve in old Princess Su's palace and secretly observe and inquire about Shunxing to see if I can find any clues." His face was wrinkled like a bun, and every wrinkle was full of sorrow. Ningxu almost burst out laughing. It was simply, Xiaoqing was as cold as ice, but he repeatedly came up with such a mischievous idea, which made her gasp in amazement and admit defeat. She barely managed to stop herself from laughing out loud. She coughed lightly and forced herself to speak in a serious manner. "This is indeed a good idea. But I'm very curious. There are so many palace maids in old Princess Su's palace. You will inevitably have close contact with them. How can you avoid suspicion at that time?" She remembered that those raw garlic were very lethal, but it was not easy to escape the vicious eyes of a large number of palace maids. "Of course, I have my tricks." Huimo looked around and quietly took out a soft thing from his arms. "Lady Ning, touch it." "Ah, what's this? Why did this shape look so much like a woman's chest?" Ningxu's mouth suddenly twitched. Chapter 152. Hurry up. Hurry up. It's really hard to refuse his kindness. Ningxu has to reluctantly touch it. "How is it? Does it feel great?" Ningxu nods. Huimo blinks his eyes and says proudly, "Haha. I got the inspiration from the fresh buttermilk you ordered in the restaurant. I mixed the buttermilk with the royal jelly and poured it into the clean pig urine. Then I put it on the chest. Even if you touch it through the clothes, no one will notice the difference. In addition, I have a unique magic weapon called Soul Intoxicating Powder. I developed it carefully. It can make people temporarily fall into chaos in a very short time. If someone really did notice that something was wrong with me, it would come in handy. But it's only effective for the first time. The more relaxed the mind is, the easier it is to succeed. If I use it later, it won't be effective when the other party is immune. I have to continue to improve it in the future. The amount of silver grass may need to be added. Oh right, these days I have a lot of experience in wearing women's clothes. I feel that women's skirts are much cooler than men's pants. At first, it was a bit awkward, But later I got used to it, and it was quite comfortable. I can use it as a reference to make some improvements in the future. The more he talks, the more ridiculous Ning Shu is. She can't help but touch her forehead. What's your master's attitude when you study these things? Guillermo tidies up the things with a smile, and prepares to modify it later. Master didn't say anything. He just asked me to continue to work hard. What's wrong? My ambition is to be the best inventor in the history of Great Yu. This kind of unorthodox invention. Ning Shu is speechless. She goes against her conscience and says, nothing. It's very good. She and Guillermo go separate ways and do their own things. Ning Shu walks quietly along the palace wall. She hides the handkerchief in her sleeve even tighter. The known information almost confirms that the 13th princess is the suspect. At present, it has been found out that Shen Xing and Wen Qiren were old friends. Wen Qiren died 6 years ago due to a poisonous wasp sting. The cause of death has not been made public yet. Xiao Zhongping has hidden the corpse of the poisonous wasp well. It is not as if he has no desire for revenge. Shen Xing is definitely related to this case, and Xiao Zhongping is also involved in a series of matters. In the worst-case scenario, if Xiao Zhongping was the mastermind behind the scenes, then could it be that she murdered Qi Zhanyu because Wen Siren's death was related to imperial concubine Qi? Of course, this was just a random guess based on the few obvious clues at the moment. If he wanted to find out the truth, the next thing he had to do was, first he had to find out why Wen Qiren died. Second, this case involved a lot of people, and it was not something that could be solved with just a few people. Now that he had found Shen Xing, this nail, he would continue to follow her lead to see if he could find out more inside information. Right, there was also the strange matter of Qi Zhuanyu being haunted by the wolf demon. Could it have some hidden connection with this matter? When Siren's death had been around for many years, it was not something that could be investigated in 2 or 3 days. Guillermo should be able to deal with Shen Xing. As for Qi Zhuanyu, should she think of a reason to contact her? That arrogant young lady was really scared out of her wits today. Thinking like this, Ning Shu quickly returned to the agreed place with Xiahou Qing. Xiahou Qing was not there. His Majesty heard about what happened before and after today's Taiping banquet, and sent him for questioning, leaving Jiuxi to wait for her. Before Ning Shu could speak, Jiuxi had already nodded and saluted. He opened the box that he had been holding in his hand and presented it to her. Shi Ziyi thought that you might need it later, so he specially ordered me to prepare this for you before meeting His Majesty. Ning Shu walked a few steps closer to take a look and smiled. How did that guy know that she needed these? It was like a roundworm in her stomach. Putting away the box, Ning Shu returned the salute and thanked him. Thank you for your trouble. The sun was already setting in the west. Qi Zhuanyu had suffered a great shock today, and was left in the palace by imperial concubine Qi to comfort her. It was close to the time to release the key to the harem. She had to hurry. The other party's every move was urgent. She could not guarantee when they would make another move. If the future Shi Ziyi of Pingnan Wang's mansion really went crazy and died an unnatural death, it would be really bad. Thinking like this, Ning Shu quickened her pace. However, she heard Jiuxi catch up with her again and solemnly said, in addition, Shi Ziyi ordered me to tell you, do whatever you want to do. Even if someone really dies in the end, you don't have to worry. With him, even if the sky falls, it won't hurt you. Her heart that had been running for half a day without rest seemed to have been blown by a wisp of wind quietly. Her tense limbs and bones silently relaxed. Ning Shu was stunned for a moment and then smiled slightly. Thank your Shi Ziyi for me. Chapter 153. The token was carefully checked 3 or 4 times before it was allowed into the fragrance hall. Ning Shu had just stepped into the hall when she was almost blinded by the treasures in front of her. All kinds of gold and jade treasures, jewelry, and silk almost filled half of the fragrance hall. Ever since the matter of Qi Zhuanyu choosing the heir consort came out, needless to say, Consort Qi's rewards were endless. The other concubines and concubines of the other palaces also received rewards, almost breaking the threshold of the fragrant palace hall. As for the strange curse of the 8 characters, it was tacitly ignored by the palaces. After all, Namping Wang's heir didn't say anything. In front of such a joyous event, no one was willing to be unlucky. Ning Shu had vaguely heard Qi Zhanyu's voice before she even saw her face. Those 2 bolts of silk were newly offered by Zhongchuan this year. Only 30 to 50 bolts of silk are produced in a year. They are worth more than 10,000 gold. Even Aunt only received 2 bolts of silk. Now they are all in my hands. Pack them up carefully. If you accidentally break a thread, you won't be able to pay for it even with your heads. Beside her, her personal nanny, Mama Hui, smiled and joked, "Young miss, don't worry. I'm here. I won't let these rare things be damaged by those careless maidservants. This silk satin is so soft and precious. When young miss and his highness get married, it'll be perfect to make 2 sets of sleeping clothes." Qi Zhanyu's cheeks reddened. She stomped her feet and said angrily, "Mother Hui, you can't make fun of me like this." Mother Hui covered her mouth and laughed. "How am I making fun of you? This is a joyous event that is set in stone. This old servant has never had a son or daughter in my life. I only dared to secretly treat young miss as my daughter. Now that young miss has such a good marriage, my heart is sweeter than honey. I only hope that young miss will give birth to a little prince soon after your marriage, so that this old servant can continue to work hard for young Mississippi." The anger on Qi Zhanyu's face deepened, but she couldn't hide the anticipation in her eyes. Mother Hui. This Qi Zhanyu was much cuter than her usual arrogant and despotic self. Ning Shu thought to herself and asked a palace servant to pass on the message. As soon as Qi Zhanyu heard that someone from the Namping mansion had come to greet her, she hurriedly ordered someone to let her in. Qi Zhanyu recognized Ning Shu at a glance and said, "It's you, little eunuch. I've seen you at the Taiping banquet. You were the one who brought His Highness's letter to the front hall. In that case, you also played a part in my success today. Auntie Hui, reward me." Mother Hui immediately took out an ingot of gold and stuffed it into Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu tried to push it away several times but failed. She could only reluctantly accept it with a smile. Then she took the box and said, "Fourth miss, you've been frightened again and again today. My family's heir is very worried, so he sent this servant to bring you some tonics that can calm your mind and calm your nerves. Please take them." After she finished speaking, she added, "In addition, His Highness ordered this servant to pass on a message to you. If Miss feels the need, Namping Wang Estate will do its best to ensure your safety." Qi Zhouyu was touched. "Your Highness, did you really say that?" "Yes." Qi Zhouyu's face revealed a shy and self-satisfied smile. "It's enough to have his heart. As for the imperial bodyguards, Auntie has asked His Majesty to send more than 100 imperial bodyguards to guard the palace. The entire palace is tightly guarded and no thieves can enter. Please go back and tell His Highness to rest assured." When Ning Shu heard this, she scanned the surroundings. Concubine Qi really knew how to choose a place. This fragrant palace hall was originally a pavilion used to store books. There was a platform about half a zhang high, and above that was a 2-story pavilion. Later on, it was converted into a palace hall for people to rest after admiring flowers and enjoying the scenery. Qi Zhuyu was placed on the 2nd floor. Ning Shu walked all the way up from the outside of the hall. She discovered that from the outside of the hall to the inside of the hall, and then up the spiral staircase, there were dozens of guards with swords on each floor. Even a mosquito that entered would have its ancestral home thoroughly checked, let alone a thief. To be fair, this place could really be considered impregnable. She nodded and said, "This servant will pass on your message." She hesitated for a moment and said, "That's right, 4th Mississippi. There's something that His Highness would like to take the liberty to ask you about. It's about the matter of you being haunted by a wolf demon." He had heard a few words of gossip before, but most of the rumors were false and His Highness didn't take it to heart. But today, at the banquet, I heard the 13th princess mention that this matter is related to the marriage between the 2 manors. It's also related to Mrs. Safety. Would Miss please tell us so that His Highness can lend a helping hand? Qi Zhuyu, who was calm and composed just a moment ago, suddenly had a change in expression. She almost blurted out, No such thing. Don't talk nonsense." You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.